welcome to the Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 regular meeting of the Troutdale City Council. And we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Zach Andrews, would you lead us?
You got it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Sarah, please call the roll.
Sure. Counselor Andrews.
Here.
Counselor Allen. Here. Counselor One.
Here.
Counselor White.
Here.
Counselor Davidson.
Here.
Counselor Leamy.
Here.
Mayor Whitman.
Here. All right, we'll move on to, is there an agenda update, Ray?
No, Mr. Mayor, it is as written tonight.
All right. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment. Public comment on non-agenda and consent agenda items is welcome at this time. Public comment on agenda items will be taken at the time the item is considered. Public comment should be directed to the presiding officer and limited to matters of community interest or related to matters which may or could come before council. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes for each agenda item unless a different amount of time is allowed by the presiding officer with consent of the council. The council and mayor should avoid immediate or protracted responses to citizen comments. So at this time, I invite public comment. We'll start with the those participating on Zoom. Anyone wish to address the council in public comment? All right, anyone in the council chambers? Please. You're invited to sit here in front of the mic. And just state your name and the city where you live. You don't need to give your address.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for hearing me today. I'm here actually, I'm Marcia Pompeyo, talking on behalf of Saul Pompeyo from Ristorante di Pompello. And as you may know, probably, because due to summertime, he's quite busy. But he was very interested to let you know that after the events of last weekend, from the arts event and the summer event that was here, there's some concerns that he has regarding this, especially because during the event, and my understanding is that there was like an agreement of not having vendors that would be selling things that you already have within the businesses in town. One of those is the one, recently there's a ice cream parlor on the main street. And on those, at least on Friday and Saturday, I think, there was a ice cream truck on almost in front of it. So while this new business that we would like, that the business people here would like to support, well, they had all this in front of them. Another issue is that, and my understanding is that there is like 6 businesses on the street that have licenses for alcohol beverages. And there was another stand also selling beers. So yes, it was a very nice event, but what we would like, and this is the question, Mayor Ripma, is if there's a way to schedule a meeting with the organizers and have like clear guidelines on how these events are going to work like. Because every year we go through this issues, and small business owners of small businesses like Ristorante di Pompello are going through, how is this year going to be? So instead of waiting till the next major event to work on it now that it has just passed and we have all in our memories what is happened to establish guidelines and have like a working session.
Understood.
Thank you.
Good idea. We should do it now while it's still fresh in our minds.
Right.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much for today.
We should do that, and we will.
Thank you.
Figure out a time. Anybody else wish to address us at public comment? All right, I'll close public comment and go on to agenda item number 3, which is a presentation of the annual report from the Port of Portland. Welcome. Just introduce yourselves, please, and we'll go forward.
Good evening, Mayor Ritma, members of council. For the record, my name is Dan Eisenbeis. I serve as the Regional Affairs Manager at the Port of Portland.
Good evening, Mayor Ritma and council. My name is Chris Damian. I'm a Troutdale alum, and I serve as a development manager with business development properties at the Port of Portland. Good to see everybody again.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for having us. I'm Emily Bauer. I'm a senior manager with partnerships and property development. We are nested in the Trade and Economic Development Division of the Port of Portland. Thank you for having us. Okay, great.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I believe that in your packets, you also have the 2025 report memo on East Multnomah County strategy and activities on Port of Portland properties. Next slide, please. So this evening, we would like to provide an update on, well, first, a little bit of background about who we are at the Port of Portland, and then updates on our East County strategy and our work with the East Multnomah County Coalition. Emily will speak to that. And then Chris will provide updates about our work at Troutdale Airport and the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, as well as some of our partnership work here in Troutdale, and then we're happy to take questions from council at the end. So next slide, please. Just briefly, a little bit about the Port of Portland. We are a public entity. We are a public entity whose mission is to build shared prosperity for the region through travel, trade, and economic development. We achieve this through the operations of major infrastructure. This includes 3 airports, PDX, Hillsborough Airport, and then of course the airport here in Troutdale. We also operate 2 marine terminals on the Willamette River. You can see there Terminal 4 and Terminal 5, and then 1 terminal on the Columbia River, Terminal 6. We are also responsible for dredging the Columbia River from Portland to Astoria to maintain a navigable channel that serves the ports in both Oregon and Washington. Apologies for the jumping of sleds, if that's making anybody seasick. We love our transportation puns at the port. We also operate 6 business parks, the newest of which is the Mass Timber and Housing Innovation Campus at the former Terminal 2 in Portland, and then also notably the Gresham Vista Business Park, as well as the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, otherwise known as TRIP. Cumulatively, or overall, the port contributes about $9.7 billion in annual GDP. We support nearly 100,000 jobs, and we foster $578 million in annual state and local tax revenue. Emily will speak more to our work here in East Multnomah County and in Troutdale.
Apologies about a little bit of technical difficulty we're having. Let's see if we can just keep it in PDF mode and it won't self-advance. We're gonna try this.
We're really eager to share the purpose of this.
Apologies, Dan. Thank you, Mayor Ripma, for participating at the East Multnomah County Economic Development Social. It was great to have you along with other elected leaders in East Multnomah County, including Fairview, Wood Village, partners from Gresham, in addition to Councilor Ashton Simpson from Metro and Commissioner Jones Dixon from our District 4. So we had a great showing of both coalition partners and elected leaders. So thank you very much for your time. We're going to give you a really high-level overview of the roadmap. My apologies for a little bit of the cutoff there. But the strategy is about building a shared roadmap for inclusive economic development in East Multnomah County. The goal is to invest with intention and make sure economic growth reflects the priorities of the people who live and work here. We'll measure this success by prioritizing community-driven outcomes, ensuring local voices, government, community groups, residents see their priorities in this roadmap. And we're going to move together towards a more inclusive economy across industries and across scales, not just traded sector, but also small and mid-scale businesses. Our role is to convene and to partner. We don't own the roadmap. It's owned by the coalition and all the steering committee members and community members who helped coalesce around the vision. And it's not just about projects, it's really about shared progress together. So if we move to the next slide, it's a 3-year work plan. And when we came to you last year, we were in the engagement phase where we were bringing together the steering committee, holding several working sessions and a series of roundtables, both with community organizations and businesses and economic institutions. We're taking all of that great information and we're moving now into our 3rd phase, which is really the action-oriented part of the roadmap, where we're really building the coalition and we're driving projects together. During that time, as we were distilling our findings and our analysis, we bucket them into 6 essential focus areas that can help us close the economic gap that's unique to East Multnomah County. These elements guide the recommendations for the roadmap, and they're designed to support a coalition approach. The projects are prioritized, that we're going to share later in a moment, must demonstrate progress in meeting one or more of these findings. So just to highlight a couple, education and training. This is really about knowing that training brings talent and it brings income growth. So how can we strengthen career pathways from K to 12 to industry and businesses? And how do we improve the gaps that are happening there? How do we align CTE programs with employer needs is the goal. Another example, as you all know, is really around transportation, is equals access to opportunity. So we need to make sure that we're aligning our regional transportation strategies and prioritizing those so that they cross jurisdictional boundaries and aren't just one solution for one city. So the roadmap here, you can see, this is really focusing on work plans now that we have the roadmap. It is our guiding principles and our implementation. What are we measuring ourselves against? And so when we think about the vision, we think about the project charter, and we think about the goals of the roadmap, it's all created and co-created with our steering committee members. And so this is the vision that they've co-created. So East Multnomah County is a thriving global economic district that celebrates its community and fosters inclusive and sustainable growth, integrating education, government, civic, and infrastructure assets. So as I mentioned, the coalition is made up of representatives from these various organizations. Our next 2 meetings are in August and November. We will continue to convene for 1 year until 2026. And the focus of these work plans will be on these 3 priority projects. While these current priorities, we took a culmination of about 50 projects that looked across the jurisdictions. And we worked with the steering committee and applied a series of methodology to confirm which projects should be elevated. They are not excluded, any of those other projects from the list, but we felt that if we could move these 3 projects at the scale and at the organizational capacity that the project sponsors have, that we can really make a difference, that makes a unique footprint in East Multnomah County, not just for the cities, but for the entire subregion. So the first project is Vance Vision Master Plan. It's a 90-acre site in the heart of Rockwood, Gresham. It's an old quarry, if those of you that are familiar with this. They've done some significant master planning around 3 phases of the site. They're looking at 190th employment corridor, which is really relevant to this economic development roadmap. They're looking at a destination regional park that they're looking to kind of essentially fill the quarry, not fill it, but use it as an amenity. And then really thinking about a mixed-use housing corridor. So right around 181st and Stark is where this quarry sits. Gresham Vista Business Park Lot 11 is a port-owned property. It's a unique property in our portfolio. It is a mixed-use commercial site. So we believe it's at the corner of the Gresham Vista Business Park, which houses thousands of current jobs. We believe that there is an opportunity to think about a workforce housing / service training facility or a cluster of uses that would help support those businesses in the adjacent cities that include Wood Village, Fairview, and Gresham. And then we have the Semiconductor and Advanced Manufacturing Workforce Program. This is a Mount Hood Community College program. They've been actively bringing together several steering committee members to really help understand what are the needs from high school to college. We know that in East Multnomah County, not everyone goes after a bachelor's or a secondary college education opportunity, but there's a lot of folks that are saying, hey, Mount Hood Community College is my nearest and most accessible education opportunity. So how do we make sure that we're skilling them up for the businesses that are located here within East Multnomah County? And they are continuing to actively convene. So each of these project sponsors have independent work groups that will basically level up into the East Multnomah County Coalition. And for the next steps, this gives you just a little bit of understanding of what we're going to be doing together. Our intention is that we've built a strong and coordinated foundation. We're aligning our cross-sector strengths, and we're collectively advocating across jurisdictional lines and focusing on practical and community-centered solutions. The Port's committed to supporting this effort for the next 2 months, but we are going to be working with our partners to figure out what does that look like. 2 years. What does that look like after 2 years? How do we sustain the longevity of this coalition effort? How do we bring on new projects to continue to advocate for? So we'll be working with them over the course of the time we have together. With that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Chris to talk about the airport and Trip.
Thank you, Emily. And again, this is the Troutdale Airport. This was actually the genesis of why we come to the city annually. So several of you, I think, were in the room 10 years ago. Actually, not this room, but down at Edgefield, I was there too. That was my first intro to Troutdale and to the Port of Portland, where we discussed the airport master plan back in 2016. So what to know about the Troutdale Airport today? Traffic remains steady, tenanting remains steady at this point. We have 20 tenant leaseholds on site. It includes actually 8 businesses that employ roughly 45 people. When you consider direct and indirect costs, as well, indirect employment rather. We are continuing to do repeated safety operation checks and maintenance, ongoing maintenance. The airport is in really good shape from an aeronautical perspective as far as its operations. We have regularly scheduled quarterly tenant meetings with our tenants and our ops team that regularly check in. That includes also the contract tower folks who staff the tower is on a contract with the FAA. One thing, and this ties back a little bit to Emily's conversation as well, the EMC Coalition does see the airport as a site of interest. So there are going to be opportunities to chat with the city as well as the FAA to consider long-term options for the airport. We also know that the city, through some of the capital improvement planning, may have some needs to consider future infrastructure upgrades. So we'll be discussing those opportunities with you all and the staff at that time. Next slide, please. And so for TRIP, the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, moving off the airfield and onto our industrial property. For those of you who've been with Troutdale for a while, you've heard this abbreviation. It is the significant regional industrial park in East County. We have created over time 14 developable lots with a very significant wetland mitigation area that is weaved in between. This is a highly engineered site. It took a lot of time and effort. It is a super fun site at a super fun site in the best way. Part of the appeal also was kind of these considerations of community benefit beyond even the economic and ecological impact, and that included the Chalk Chalk Trail, which several of you, I think, have gotten to experience, and several of you were at the trail opening that we were able to do last fall. The economic impacts of this site have been really transformational for this community and for the region as a whole. We've netted over 5,000 jobs that have been directly attributed to the site, and we've collected nearly $800 million of private investment that has been generated from the site. So it has really repositioned this community and this region to an area of not just veterans, but also of employment. And Troutdale Trip is a big part of that story. And really, we could not have done it, the port could not have done it without the partnerships that the city provided at key times. At the next slide, I'm sorry, I'm going to push the wrong button. So what is currently on the ground, what you see here in yellow, we have 4 main anchor tenants. The first one on the ground was FedEx, which took down the first 3 lots, of which they occupy 2 of them. FedEx has still room to grow. They have kind of 2 wings off that kind of fork off their building there to the east. They have room for a third and actually some additional room further to the east. They've built a truck bay in recent years on the west side of the site, so they are quite established and still have the opportunity to grow. Amazon, of course, was the big fish that was landed in 2017 and went live in 2019. That was a monster project. I was fortunate to be at the city when that came through, and obviously it's been very transformational, a significant employer, currently owned by Trammell Crow and operated via Clarion Partners. Since they've operated, have already made numerous upgrades and improvements to the facility, really a major deal. We also have C&S Wholesale Grocers, which took down Lot 10 right across the street on Sundial Road from FedEx. C&S obviously is in the wholesale business. They distribute to groceries and actually briefly considered going into retail operations. Had the Safeway Albertsons merger with Kroger not fallen apart, they would have potentially even gotten into storefronts. And then the big one, which is recent, and we admittedly did not directly sell to them, however, Lot 12, which we helped to develop and sold to BPA, which then got sold to another business, and then ultimately to this company, Next Year Energy Resources. This is the so-called BESS, or Battery Energy Storage System site. What looks to be like a bunch of shipping containers on the ground is actually the largest single investment that Troutdale has had. It is close to a $220 million investment for battery facilities in partnership with PG&E that provides this region a tremendous amount of resiliency and energy capacity that it otherwise would not have had. It's a very interesting technology. They're very well endowed, and it's really regionally transformative as far as how we view energy here. So for a site that is extremely difficult to get to, that did not have a lot of typical industrial development attractiveness, it was really a good use with minimal impact, but with significant financial benefit to this community, both short-term with permitting and long-term with property tax revenue. Next slide. And despite that, we still have lots available. So if you know anybody looking for some lots, please have them call Emily and I. We have lot 4 and 5, which is right next to the water pollution control facility that you guys own. It's about 22 acres in size. Lot 9, which is the corner lot there by Swigert and Sundial Road, is a nice corner lot at 6.5 acres. So really decent sized lots. There are, as with any property, some easements or some other considerations you have to contend with, but we do get a significant amount of interest, particularly lot 9 recently, as far as development opportunity. Industrial land is in very short supply across the region. Many of you know that. And Troutdale and Trip in particular is just really well seen, so we can command really good opportunities for pricing and be very mindful of checking in what the city would like to see as well for those properties. 2 additional privately held properties. I mentioned the FedEx site earlier. I guess it's not private, but BPA also has a land hold on lot 11, and they're holding that for strategic purposes as well behind the C&S site there. Next slide. And so that is our presentation. Dan, I don't know if you have any final words for us. Apologies for our advancing slide.
Got a mind of its own.
Yeah.
I think we'd just like to reiterate our appreciation for the opportunity to appear in front of you this evening and annually. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take questions. Thank you.
Questions? Zach?
Yeah, appreciate your time, and Chris, it's good to see you again. When I first started looking into volunteering with the city, you were community development director at the time and encouraged me to get out there and volunteer and check things out and start attending meetings, so it's cool to, I guess, full circle, to see you again on this side.
You can blame me, sorry. Thank you, Counselor.
Yeah, but yeah, I did have a question, just with the recent FEMA changes and regulations for mitigation potentially affecting like wetland areas with, which may or may not be off-site mitigation like we've done in the past. Do you foresee any difficulty with development of the remaining 31 acres that we're talking about?
I can speak a little bit to it, but I haven't been tracking that. You want to take the first stab at it?
So I cannot give you a definitive answer, but I will note that this area is behind, it's in the protected or managed floodplain behind the levees that are operated by now the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District. So I think that's a significant factor to layer in with those requirements.
Yeah, that's what context I would have added to, that we have that levy, and that has helped illustrate the map that we are currently outside the special flood hazard area.
Okay.
So it lends itself still well as long as we maintain that levy.
Awesome, thank you.
Anybody else? Glenn?
Yeah, welcome everybody. Good to see you again, Chris. Yeah, Ken Anderton went down and on a tour of the battery farm. Dave was there as well. It was very interesting. I didn't realize it was that big of an asset. So I appreciate the partnership we have with you guys. It's really helped Troutdale financially quite a bit. So my question has to do with the airport. It's really if there's anything we can do to help advance that. We see it as an underutilized asset. And it's beautiful down. If you ever spend any time down there watching the planes come in and land and take off, I think it has a lot of potential. So I'm just offering that. I think Troutdale would be very interested in helping partner with you guys. If there's anything we can do, just let us know.
Yeah, I think we'll have certainly engagement opportunities. We have to, the master plan will need at least a quick refresh with the FAA, so there'll be an engagement opportunity there. And infrastructure considerations too, to open up possibilities. That's going to be probably a conversation we'll have with your public works team.
All right.
Yes.
I just wanted to kind of just piggyback on Glenn's comment. I think last year at the same time I asked kind of a similar question. Is there any opportunities for the actual airport to be utilized more efficiently or better? And I kind of come from just being very naive. I work out of Aurora Airport, and seems to be flourishing. Over the last 5 years, they've built 4 new hangars. Seems to be there's a lot of probably private traffic that comes in and out of there, which seems like it would be beneficial. It's a state airport, not. But I just didn't know what are the limitations of the airport being utilized more efficiently, or just even more in general, I guess.
I can offer one thought, and then I don't know, Dan or Emily, if you have additional thoughts. One thing that's a little bit, you brought up Aurora, which is an interesting comparator. One thing about Troutdale, when you look at the flight operation patterns, and I think, Kama, if you're in the room, feel free to correct me, but Troutdale's, there's really 2 general buckets of flight operations. There's itinerant, meaning I'm flying from one place and I'm going to another place, and those are operations, a takeoff and a landing. And then there's local, which is a takeoff. I take off from one place and I land in the same place. I'm circling around, or I'm doing a flight seeing, which we obviously have Envy Adventures out there, or I'm doing training. And Troutdale, compared to some of its peer airports, and Aurora would be one potentially, Scappoose, Minville, such airports of that same size and operational capacity. Troutdale has a much higher rate of local traffic. So that illustrates a little bit of kind of the consideration as far as, long-term investment, as far as what you might consider. It checks out because you have obviously the flight school there through the FBO, through Gorge Winds. You also have then the helicopter training academy, and those are operations just as much too. So that is one consideration as far as, while the airports might be similar in size or runway pattern, they're actually rather different in some cases. And so that may be also one of the reasons why the state, in Aurora might have seen some effort, because that's much more of an itinerant flight or facility. They obviously have training there as well too, but even Aurora has some complications from land use compatibility and so forth. Dan, I don't know if, or Emily, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but that's one unique aspect of Troutdale.
I don't think I have much necessarily to add, other than we continue to understand and evaluate the development feasibility and the costs. So if you can imagine, like community development, you often will bring in an amenity that then attracts that private investment. And so I think right now we need to understand what can the port bear from that type of amenity, and what are the costs associated to that amenity, and then what kind of extra private investment might that spur. And so really evaluating that and staging that in a market where financing capital projects is a little bit there's a lot of troubleshooting right now with that, and not a lot of federal funding that we can anticipate at the moment. And the FAA plays a large role in providing grants for that type of infrastructure improvement.
Yeah, it just seems on the outside, again, I know there's a lot of regulations and flight patterns and stuff that runway length, but it just seems like it would be easier to go to Troutdale than PDX, and could potentially be cheaper for people to hang out there and be easier to get in and out if we had, like you said, some more nice amenities, I think, or something like that. So, and I know that's more of a future thing, but thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councilman.
Anyone else? I'll open it up. Traditionally, we open to public comment in case there is any. Does anyone on Zoom wish to, we're not voting on anything tonight here on the council, but does anyone wish to address the council under public comment regarding the port's report?
Mayor Redmond, Paul Wilcox, Troutdale.
All right.
I just have a question for the panel there. A few years back, there was talk of rebuilding the airport runway, but it was going to be shorter and narrower. I was just curious if that ever happened.
So the airport runway is still maintaining its current dimensions, and through pretty dedicated operations and maintenance opportunities, we've been able to extend the life of the existing configuration out past 2030. I believe 2032, if I recall correctly, is the date. So it's given us some ample time to keep that configuration, which was a pretty grave concern. I recall 10 years ago, there was a lot of concern from the pilots, but the runway is maintain that same dimension.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I shared that concern, and I know Glenn did, and let's just say Troutdale was concerned about that proposal. I'm glad it hasn't happened yet. I think I saw another hand out in Zoom. I don't see him anymore. Where is he?
Oh, he's up in the top left.
Oh, okay. Well, that changes. Frank, you're on.
How are you? I just want to give a shout out to the Port of Portland for all their help with the Chalk Chalk Trail and the mitigation that's going on in the bird sanctuaries and all the green space that's on the other side of the levee, as well as their support with any issues that we have in the area. Looking forward to working with them more, and we have about 130 people now signed up on the Friends of Chalk Chalk Trail. So you get a lot of local support in this area for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone here, anyone else on Zoom? I don't see anyone else. In the room, anyone care to address us in public comment? All right, well, hey, Emily and Chris, I saw you, I think it was last week at that social event that was very nice, and went through a lot of the other parts of the community that work with the port, and thank you for that. I also would appreciate receiving your presentation. We didn't get it in the packet. It was good and brief and important, and just send it to Sarah, if you would. If there's nothing else from the council, we'll just say thank you for coming, and we'll see you again, I'm sure.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 4.1, which is a public hearing. Introduction of an ordinance amending chapters 6, 8, 9, and 9 of the Troutdale Development Code, and amending titles 3 and 5 of the Troutdale Municipal Code. Erica,
Yes.
You're
hold
on.
1 second here.
all right.
Share my screen. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Erica Palmer, Community Development Director for the city. Tonight before you is the Climate Friendly Equitable Communities Municipal Code and Development Code Amendment Package. Tonight is the introduction on this code package. So your job as council is to review and to consider Planning Commission's recommendation on the code amendments that are in the package tonight. And those include amendments to chapters, Troutdale Development Code Chapter 6, 8, 9, and then also to Troutdale Municipal Code Title 3, we added a new chapter, and Troutdale Municipal Code Title 5, Business License and Regulations. So why are these amendments being made? CFEC, which is the Climate Friendly Equitable Communities Program, is administered by the state of Oregon, and it is new rules centered around meeting climate goals. This applies to regions with populations over 50,000 and cities, all cities within the metro region. These goals really aim to reduce climate pollution, provide more housing and transportation options, promote more equitable land use planning, and increase housing choices. And a lot of this work is centered and based along parking regulations. So CFEC parking reforms are in 2 phases, and I'm going to go over phase A and parking reform A and parking reform B tonight. We did receive a grant from we did receive an extension from the state to implement these reforms by June 30th of this year. So parking reform A. Parking reform A sets out parking minimums for specific types of uses that you can see on the slide. So the city, we can only require one parking space per unit for residential developments. No parking requirements for residential care, training, or treatment facilities. And then, as you can see in that last bullet, there's no parking requirements for the list of the uses there on that slide. Parking Reform A also talks about best practices for parking. These include for new multifamily residential buildings with 5 or more units, a developer would need to provide the conduit to accommodate 40% of the parking spaces for electric vehicle parking. So this just means installing the conduit, just installing the wiring. It doesn't mean that the developer at that time has to install the charging stations. And then for commercial developments, they're also going to be required to install EV conduits at no less than 20% of the vehicle parking spaces required. So additional best practices for parking include the city, we can't require garages or carports. Garage parking has to count towards off-street parking mandates. And then provisions of shared parking are also allowed to meet parking mandates. And required parking may be provided off-site within 2,000 feet of pedestrian travel of the site. And then there's also additional reduced parking mandates for different criteria that we see in the code. And if you put in solar panels or wind power capacity, your parking spaces could be reduced. So there's also preferential placement of carpool and van pool parking. And we need to allow the encouragement and redevelopment of underutilized parking areas to allow and facilitate for shared parking. And then new parking lots of more than a half acre in size must install 40% tree canopy or solar panels as well. So in addition to that, under Parking Reform A, it sets out some criteria for bus lines and frequent transit corridors. And here in Troutdale, our TriMet bus line 77 is the only frequent bus route, according to the definition that's in the state requirement. And we can't require parking requirements within a half mile of the transit corridor. In addition to that, in Troutdale and the town center, we don't have any parking mandates as well. So what does this look like? So here's a map, and this is the area that we would not require any parking mandates for. That includes the town center, and then again, that half mile from the transit line 77. All right, now I'm gonna be moving on to Parking Reform B. And Parking Reform B wasn't as clear as and objective as Parking Reform A. It involved some policy choices that the city had to look at and Planning Commission needed to review and make some recommendations on for staff how to move forward. So as part of Parking Reform B, there were 3 options from the state. The option 1 was the most simple approach, just to repeal all parking mandates within the city. And then we had option 2, which the state calls the fair pricing option. And this option reduces parking mandates for certain types of developments in key areas and also adopts fair parking policies. And then option 3, once again, was just kind of a slated menu list of further reductions to parking mandates for certain uses within the city. So looking at all of these options, Planning Commission took the strategy of what's going to have the less impact to Troutdale residents. And in doing that and answering that question or analyzing that question for Planning Commission, staff, we looked at a map of all of the current vacant parcels within Troutdale and where they're located and what they were zoned. And then we also did a survey of employers with 50 or more employees to find out how many employees take alternative modes of transportation to work daily. And this gets to one of the options that's found in option 2, and I'm gonna get back to that here in a minute. So the Planning Commission moved to really study and look at option 2 for the city of Troutdale. And with that, I came to City Council in early January and presented that option, and Council said, yes, move forward with that option. So that's what we did. So Parking Reform B, option 2, the fair policies options. There is this kind of menu here of 5 different choices. In the city, we needed to adopt one of those menu options from 1 to 3. And then we had to adopt a second option, and that option could be any option between 1 and 5. And so we took the approach of creating new language in the municipal code around taxing new commercial parking lots. The City of Troutdale doesn't have any commercial parking lots. And we asked DLCD, even though we don't have commercial parking lots, can we choose that option? And they said, yes, you can go ahead and create a program that could be used in the future. So that's what we did. And then number 3, you see, is the flexible commute benefits for employers with more than 50 or more employees. And those employers would have to pay a monthly stipend of $50 to those who choose alternative transportation options to get to work and that don't use parking on site. I just want to talk a little bit about that. So we sent out a survey last summer to the 19 businesses here in Troutdale that employ 50 or more employees. We heard back from about half of those businesses, and most of those businesses are in Trip, and most of the businesses have they don't have a significant number of employees that ride public transit to work on a daily basis. It was all pretty low, and so that is why Planning Commission decided to move forward with that option there. So procedurally, this is a type 4 land use application. Like I said, you're going to be reviewing Planning Commission's recommendation. You're the final decision maker body on this package. Tonight's the first introduction to the amendment package. The second hearing is scheduled for June 24th. Public engagement and notice. We did have a project website all about CFAC. On the planning side of our website, we did a couple champion articles. We presented to the CAC and the Town Center Advisory Board about these regulations. Obviously, we did the newspaper notice in line with the state requirements, online notice, and the DLCD notice as well. And I do want to mention that yesterday we did receive a public comment from Paul Wilcox. And his comment listed out some additional changes to the code chapters. Those changes weren't substantive to the CFAC standards. They were more for consistency and clarity. So for example, there's a couple of times where the numbers are not spelled out in the code, and we wanted to fix all that. And I believe, you'll see that in your next update on June 24th. So I just wanted to ensure that his comments didn't make any changes actually to the regulatory aspects of CFAC. So Planning Commission, they reviewed the findings, and all the findings met our criteria that are found in our development code. And then, like I said, tonight's your first hearing of the CFAC rules mandated by the state of Oregon, and the second hearing of this ordinance is scheduled for June 24th. And in that packet will be an updated code chapters with those changes that we received comment on. So with that, any questions?
Just to be clear, the state wants us to adopt this. We agree, we got an extension to now, and now is the time. And if we should fail to adopt this, we wouldn't be able to impose parking regulations of any kind, mandates anyway. Is that about right?
Right.
That's the way I understand it too. And so I congratulate the Planning Commission's hard work on this and the choice they made. That's all I have. Questions, comments?
Quick questions.
Sure, go ahead, Glenn.
I was curious why the higher court didn't review the case.
They don't say.
And
Yeah.
they didn't want to. Okay. That's good. And, the whole thing really bothers me because I think what's made Troutdale an attractive area to live has been that parking standard that they've tried to change that, and we always held our ground, but I guess we're losing that now.
I do want to say that we've heard from Planning Commission, and I know that we've also heard from those in the community, about the parking issues, and I want to bring up the fact that the parking standards that we have in our development code right now, I have taken those standards, created a recommended parking list for the city. So when we do receive pre-applications with developers, they come in and I gently slide over the recommended parking standards that are currently in our code and let them know. These have been the parking standards that have been in Troutdale for many years, and they've worked for this community. And we respectfully ask you to think about these parking standards when you develop.
On page 10, under section C, talks about if you have a parking lot with 50 or more spaces. I didn't understand the tree canopy covering at least 40% of the new parking lot area.
Yeah, that's so you're not creating heat islands with the pavement.
So that'd be in addition to the landscaping we already require. Okay. And then it talks about on page 15, under findings there, when it's talking about the bus line.
Yes.
How do you measure that half-mile distance? Is it as the crow flies or driving down the road?
It's as the crow flies.
Okay. And then, let's see. Yeah, I must have missed it, but it's talking about the solar panel. So can you explain that?
Yep.
I don't have a page, I'm sorry.
It was the same spot you pointed out before with the tree canopy. It was
Okay.
also solar being about 40%.
40% either solar panels or tree canopy. I assume you could do it combined.
Oh, I see, just, so that would work as shading.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
I was a little thrown off on that one. Yeah, everything else I understood, and I understand you guys were up, didn't have a lot of say in it. So trust you guys to navigate like you have been, so we
The
appreciate
Plan
that.
Commission did have some great conversations around all of these new standards, so.
Great.
Anyone else? Yes?
Well, to go with how I've been going tonight, I'm gonna piggyback off one with the bus comment. My question is, I know bus routes change periodically and whatnot.
Great question.
How,
Yep.
I mean, is it just like, we have to go with what the bus route is now? And does that, if the bus route happens to change in the future, do the rules now change? And if something, I guess you would get grandfathered in if during that time.
So
But you know, it sounds like it makes sense.
No, that's a great question, because DLCD has provided some guidance on that issue, and they would like cities to reevaluate their bus lines once every year. And if changes are needed, that those changes would be made.
Thanks.
All right, this is an ordinance. We won't be voting on it tonight, but we are holding a public hearing. So I will open a public hearing. First on Zoom. Anyone on Zoom wish to address the council on this proposed ordinance? And seeing no one, I'll invite anyone in the chambers here to, who I invite comment. This is a public hearing on this proposed ordinance. Anyone wishing to address the council? Not seeing anybody, I will close the public hearing. And we aren't voting until next meeting. So thank you, Erica. And we'll move on to agenda item 4.2. And this is an ordinance prohibiting camping on public property in accordance with state and federal law. Ray Young.
Thank you, Mayor. This is simply a minor modification to our current time, place, and manner ordinance. A little history, for the last 5 years, the courts in the state have been dealing with what restrictions can cities put on homeless camping within their jurisdiction. And part of it is even though after the Supreme Court essentially allowed cities to put those restrictions, the state already had a statute that limited us to our time, place, and manner, which is we can have restrictions on homeless camping as to where they can do it and the times they can do it, to put some restrictions on it. And we've tried to model ours a little bit after Gresham, so we'd be consistent in East County. So essentially what our ordinance currently says is that between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., individuals can camp on public property, except for a limited number of locations. And we put into our ordinance those kind of locations under 829050, within 1,000 feet, of a school, within 500 feet from a freeway ingress or egress. These are places you can't camp at any time. And if we don't have an exception in here, they can stay there from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. A couple months ago, Joe Sturgey, our code compliance officer, who gets to work very early every day, showed up at the community development department at 5:30 in the morning. And as he walks up to enter into his office, there is a homeless individual sleeping on the doorstep to our community development building. We called the sheriff's office and they said, hey, it's not one of the exceptions and it's not 6 a.m. We can't do anything about it. And so when I looked at the ordinance, we had already said that you cannot camp within 500 feet from any retail or commercial business. And I said, well, why don't we add to that, or any and all government offices or facilities not covered below, and below we included all of Travis's public works locations, like wellheads and pump stations and things like that. So by making the modification to number 5, we've included city offices along with commercial offices and retail spaces, and we've pretty much excluded public offices as a place that people can camp at any time. So that is the minor modification that we are asking the council make in our time, place, and manner statute.
All right, that's nice and clear. Anybody have any questions? All right, this is an ordinance introduction. I assume the second reading, is that the next council meeting?
Yeah, we'll do that on the 24th.
Okay. And so we're not adopting it tonight, but we are holding a public hearing. So I will open the public hearing. Anyone on Zoom wish to address the council on this proposed ordinance? All right, seeing no one, how about in the council chambers? Yes. Diane, come forward.
Hello, Diane Castillo White, City of Troutdale. And pardon me, I did not read it, but I wanted to know if trails were included.
What was included?
Trails.
Yes, well, kind of. What we have is the next exception within 250 feet of within 250 feet of the high water mark of the Columbia River, Sandy River, and Beaver Creek. So that, we kind of looked at the map, figured out 250 feet from Beaver Creek or the Sandy River pretty much covers almost all the trails.
Great.
That we have. So we already had that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yes, the new Sandy River Waterfront Park will be covered.
Anyone else wish to address the council on this ordinance during the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and we'll take it up for consideration at the next council meeting. Moving on, the next agenda item is 5.1, a resolution certifying the City of Troutdale's eligibility and election to receive state shared revenues for 2025-26. Eric Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. This is one of the several annual items that I bring to you. Much of it is process and procedure to make sure we stay in compliance with Oregon local budget law and other requirements from the state. This one in particular is related to state shared revenues. We had a hearing with the budget committee on this same topic. As outlined in the Exhibit A, it outlines the particular funds where they would go and the estimated amounts. They certainly are estimates, will be subject to what economic activity occurs. But there's the liquor tax, cigarette tax, general revenue sharing, all of which go into the general fund. The total, about 400,000. The remainder of the 1.7 million it goes into the street fund, with 1% going into the part or the path and trails fund based on the state statute. But the 1.2, almost 1.3 million is from the gasoline tax, goes into our street fund to be used for the maintenance and preservation and upkeep of our city streets. As was pointed out by Mr. Wilcox during the budget hearing, I did not have and currently don't have on the schedule anything of the marijuana tax, since I need to present both this and the budget based on what the budget committee approved. I wasn't modifying it midstream, but as I mentioned in the staff report, as well as in the resolution, I can certify to the state next time around that we no longer have the prohibition that prevented us from receiving marijuana revenue. So that will be included in the certification that I have to do later this month. Estimated when we got it 3 years ago or so, I believe it was about 21,000. Marijuana retail operations have continued to grow in the state, and as a consequence, that has been price competition. So the prices have come down. So the relative amount of revenue I would tend to think is probably going to be drifting down toward about the $15,000 mark, but we'll happily take it if the state will share it with us. So that'll be incorporated as it comes in. As I mentioned in the staff report, there's a few requirements in the ORS that we have to go through in order to be able to receive the revenue. One was the public hearing before the budget committee on the possible uses of state shared revenue, which we accomplished back on April 14th. The second is a public hearing before the city council on the proposed uses of state shared revenue, which as they are proposed in the budget. And that'll be the public hearing that the mayor will conduct here in just a moment. And then the third step is that the jurisdiction has to both determine for the state, represent to the state that it is eligible to receive the state shared revenue, and that if we are eligible, that we would elect to receive it. And there's a number of services that are required as part of the statute in order to be eligible to receive state shared revenue, and we fulfill all of the requirements. So it requires that there are 4, there's 7, and we cover all 7. So we certainly are eligible to receive state shared revenue. So with that, I'm happy to address any questions that the council may have before you have the public hearing.
Questions from the council? State shared revenue. Okay. Not seeing any, I will open a public hearing. This is a matter we're going to vote on tonight. A resolution certifying the City of Troutdale's eligibility and election to receive state shared revenues for fiscal year 2025-2026. Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to address the council? Seeing none, how about in the chambers here? Anyone wish to address the council on this resolution? We will be voting on it tonight. Okay, I see none. I will close the public hearing. And if there's no further questions, it's before us. I would welcome a motion.
I move we adopt a resolution certifying the City of Troutdale's eligibility and election to receive state shared revenues for fiscal year 2025-2026.
I'll second that.
Sarah, call the roll.
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor One?
Yes.
Mayor Ripma?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Davidson?
Yes.
Counselor Leahy?
Yes.
All right. Moving on to agenda item 5.2. resolution adopting the City of Troutdale's fiscal year 2025-2026 annual budget and making appropriations. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, another one of our annual activities that I bring to you. This is the budget as approved by the Budget Committee back in April. The requirements for the publication in the newspaper on the required prescribed state form LB1 has been done to fulfill that obligation. As you recall, the Budget Committee deliberated over 3 nights over the budget and the various choices. Much of it was focused on the general fund, but this budget adoption that you've got covers, of course, all of our funds and has appropriations of 67 million plus. Includes all of our, includes the general fund, our utility operating funds, our capital project SDC funds. Citywide, the overall requirements are 81,000. As I mentioned, the appropriations are the 67 million, sorry, 81 million, thousand, pardon me. And in any case, it's, as I outlined in the staff report, it includes the utility rate increases that the council adopted. Budget represents the information that was provided related to the FTE changes, of which there's 2 in Public Works and no staffing changes in the general fund. And as the Budget Committee had discussed, it also addresses the police and fire services fee in order to try and address the almost 2 million in additional public safety costs that the city is confronted with related to the intergovernmental agreements with both the Sheriff's Office and Gresham Fire. And as I mentioned, we've done the publications and fulfilled those local budget law requirements. The next item that's required for compliance with the local budget law prior to adoption is that the mayor holds a public hearing on the budget as it was approved by the Budget Committee and referred to the City Council. And I'm happy to address any questions that council may have.
Questions? Anybody? All right. If not, this is a resolution adopting our budget for the year 2025-26. We will be voting on it tonight, so I'm going to open a public hearing. Anyone on Zoom wish to address the council on this matter? Anyone, seeing no one, anyone in the room wishes to address the council on this matter? And there's no public comment, so I will close the public hearing. And the matters before us, I'd welcome a motion.
I'll make a motion adopting a resolution adopting the City of Troutdale's fiscal year 2025-2026 annual budget and making appropriations.
I'll second.
Second, all right, very good.
Okay.
Sarah, please call the roll.
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Wynn?
Yes?
Mayor Ripma?
Yes?
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Davidson?
Yes.
Counselor Lee?
Yes.
All right, it's adopted. Moving on to agenda item number 5.3, a resolution imposing and categorizing ad valorem taxes for fiscal year 2025-2026. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, another one of the state requirements in local budget law to process through the procedure on the record. Integral part of the budget that you just adopted represents the property taxes levied, both the permanent rate that goes into the general fund for general governmental purposes, as well as the property tax levy for the voter-approved general obligation bond debt service. The property taxes for the permanent rate for the general fund are estimated in the budget at about 7.4 million. And the property tax levy for the general obligation bond is about 400,000, about 19 cents per thousand assessed value for the debt service. It's resolution it requires to categorize the debt, some which is covered by the general government limitation of measures 5 and 50, and the general obligation bond debt, which is excluded from the property tax limitations of those measures. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to address any questions before the public hearing.
Questions from the council? All right, seeing none. We're going to have a public hearing. This is a resolution. We'll be voting on it tonight. So I will open the public hearing. Anyone on Zoom wishes to address the council on this matter? Seeing no one, anyone in the council chambers wishes to address the council on this matter? All right, there's no one. So I will close the public hearing and I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adopt a resolution imposing and categorizing ad valorem taxes for fiscal year 2025 to 2026.
I'll second.
All right, Sarah.
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor One?
Yes.
Mayor Whitmer?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Davidson?
Yes.
And Counselor Looney?
Yes.
All right. Motion is adopted. We'll go on to agenda item 5.4, a resolution setting the police and fire services fee monthly rate. And Eric's going to handle this item, but I'll just say this is a monthly fee that is going to be charged on the utility bill you get from the city. It was included in the budget we just adopted. We adopted a budget that assumed a $15 a month fee. That doesn't mean we have to do it that way, but we have adopted the necessary ordinances to impose such a fee, and tonight is the night we're setting the fee. So that's the matter. Eric? Anything else
Thank you
to
for
say?
doing my staff report for me, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the introduction. Yes, as the mayor said, this is a fee that was discussed at length with the budget committee. The assumption in the budget that was just adopted is at a $15 a month rate. The ordinances that were, the two readings for the ordinances occurred over the previous two council meetings to create the fee framework, but with no amount, were approved by the council. And that the ordinance and the code specifies that the council will set the monthly rate by resolution. So this is the setting of the monthly rate. There had been comments from different folks about whether it should be a different monthly amount, and as I had responded during those hearings, the staff has brought forward the assumption that was used with the budget committee, as we had explained during the ordinance readings, and so that's what's presented in the resolution. Of course, the council is free to make changes as they are with any matter before them. The budget that was adopted incorporates approximately $1.4 million into the general fund for the funding of public safety costs for the MCSO contract as well as the Gresham Fire contract. And with that, I'm happy to address any questions that council may have before the public hearing.
All right, I'll just say there was considerable discussion about this at the budget committee. I think for myself, and I think I speak for everyone up here, no one is happy that we have to do this. But the increases that we're looking at for police and fire services, which are contracted. We contract with Gresham for fire and Multnomah County Sheriff for police, were so large that we were in danger of not being able to run anything else in the city. Other cities around the region and state charge a fee like this. I believe Fairview just imposed one for similar police and fire services for $15. Gresham has imposed one for a while, but lots of other cities do. It isn't, nobody's happy about having to do this, but it is necessary that we provide police and fire services as well as the other services that the city provides, and we just couldn't do it without this fee. We have other plans in future that might allow us to eliminate this fee, but tonight we're trying to determine the amount of the fee or whether we should charge it at all. I'll say at budget, there was considerable talk about having it be more than $15. I don't recall anyone suggesting it be less than $15, except those who were opposed to the fee altogether. And it ended up being, the budget was adopted, assuming that we would impose a $15 fee. Having heard at least from some counselors in favor of a larger fee, I expect there'll be some discussion, but I wanted to preface it with that background information for the public. So I open it up. Who wants to talk?
I'll go.
All right. Jeffrey.
Well said, Mayor. I think it should first be said that we will all have to pay this fee ourselves. So I say all of this understanding I want to charge myself more money. I think it's really important that we keep in mind what we're trying to accomplish, which is to keep all of the wonderful things that Troutdale offers everybody. I think that in my mind, we're going to be going for a fire district next May. I think that if we are able to achieve a fire district, that part of that would be to eliminate this fee that we will hopefully set tonight. So I don't want people to think that they're going to get double charged, because I don't think that that's fair. I also think it's important to say that Troutdale has been able to keep a really low tax rate for longer than any other city around us, and I think that we should attribute that to our city staff and how they've been able to keep our tax rate low by providing everything that we have in this wonderful city. And this fee will go to the general fund to support our fire and police contracts specifically. That's why we're doing this. So all that, I wanted to say, I want to suggest that we set a higher fee. I would like to see a fee of $25. I think that puts the city in a better financial position for not only this year, but the future, and can maybe help bridge a gap between, if a fire district doesn't pass, for us to keep getting services that the city and everybody here has become accustomed to, keep them going and rolling until we can convince the people, or if they do it this time, great, this won't be for very long. This is really important and an essential need for the city.
All right, who wants to go next?
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, and I think it is important to consider all the amenities that we do maintain. I think the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, on the other end of the spectrum is almost like a tear-filled plea from another member of the budget committee saying how much that extra fee could impact somebody on a fixed income. We have a lot of older residents, we have a lot of people on fixed incomes. I think if we get to that point where it is voted down or we're not able to move forward with another plan like a fire district, at that point we can make the call to increase and cover the differences, but giving people the opportunity to make that call themselves while kind of limiting our imposition of a fee that they have no control over at a level that we kind of budgeted for and have, planned for, so to speak, I think would be a more responsible move for the residents themselves in that sense.
So you're saying 15?
I'm saying, let's keep it at 15. If we need to raise it in the future because things don't pan out, then we will. By, again, being in the same position of not really having much of a choice other than to cover the gaps in budget.
Who else? Anyone? Glenn?
Yeah. You know, it's kind of, to me, that's the danger of having 4 people on council can increase this fee. And I think for me personally, my goal is gonna be to, as we get new money coming in, to start making sure that police and fire are a priority and not on the back burner. And we knew this contract was coming up. And, you know, there was 0 money saved or set aside or even another plan put together. And budget, we agreed to the 15. I'm okay with that. It's gonna extract a 1.4 million, is that right? Out of our community at $15, so. And I know we need the money. It's unfortunate that we got into this spot, but I'm gonna make it a personal goal of mine to, like this $220 million battery farm, when that thing comes online, I think some money needs to be set aside for police and fire, because that's really the #1 priority of government is public safety. And we gotta take it more serious. And I know the costs a lot of them are out of our hand, and I hope that this fee goes away instead of increasing. And I think together we could make that happen. And it's not just $15 for some people that have businesses or in Troutdale. For me personally, it's gonna be $90 a month. And so you got, and some people, like you said, are on fixed income. You know, we had a member of the budget committee said they couldn't afford even the $15, so. Cause costs have gone up across the board, and this was the year for that, so I think keeping it at 15 is the only way I'm gonna vote yes on this thing.
Well, I'm in agreement because I really struggle with the 15 because I know a lot of elderly and I know single-family units that really struggle with the 15 once it goes into play. Although, you know, we could look at if we need to increase it later, I would hope that we wouldn't have to and that it would go away and would be covered elsewhere, but I would vote for the 15.
I'm along the same lines. I didn't want it in the first place. None of us wanted it in the first place, but due to the aggressive stance, aggression, fire, and Multnomah County, we don't have much of a choice as a council to get something on the books. I see Jeffrey's point on, you know, having more money set aside for later on. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but you know, $15, that's substantial. You know, I think I would get behind 15, maybe 20 higher.
John?
So I have a question for Eric. So at 15, the projection is that we'll raise 1.4, or is the
That was
potential?
my estimate, yeah, when I worked through the numbers for the budget.
Oh, okay. So and what is the budget, or what are the contracts gonna do in a year? Will it go up again? I mean, fire, not police.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with fire. I mean, as we had talked about when we approved the 1-year extension, you really have a 6-month window to decide what you're gonna do for fire after July 1st of next year. And so there's a lot of possibilities. I think any of them are gonna be more cost than today, kind of regardless of what vote is or isn't on what election, because there will be transition time. It's not as though, you know, something can be implemented the day after the election kind of thing. So those costs are gonna go up. How much, I don't know at this point, depends on what path we take. And the sheriff's office contract is later on the agenda this evening, and there's already a cost specified for the following year, and I don't know what the difference is off the top of my head. But yes, it's going up a year from now as well, which I would expect all the rest of our costs are gonna go up, whether it's labor costs or PGE or supplies or, you know. Fortunately, we don't buy a lot of eggs, so, you know.
They're coming in. So the 1.4, is that 100% going this next year to fire and police?
Yeah, based on the ordinance and the municipal code change that you adopted, 100% of this fee, whatever amount it is restricted to public safety for police and fire. Cannot be used for any kind of other governmental purpose or costs.
Will 100% be spent though?
I'm sorry?
Will we have any savings to go into the next contract, or the next year of the contract? Because where I'm coming from is, okay, 1.4 is gonna get 100% spent this next year.
Yeah, I mean, the police contract is more than $5 million all by itself.
Right.
So I mean, this is just trying to offset the almost $2 million increase that we're faced with come July 1st.
Right, okay. I mean, I really don't want it to go more than $15, but if I know right now that I need more next year than $15, that's where I'm coming from. Do I already know I need more than $15 for the second year?
Well, it's like the budget discussion any year. It's a question of you determine what your available resources are and then what services you want to deliver, and then it's a combination of, are you gonna raise more revenue or are you gonna cut services? And, you know, the budget committee may choose a different approach next year. I certainly expect that the costs are gonna be greater next year for public safety. There isn't any reason for me to believe that they wouldn't be. You know, how much more, and, you know, there are, of course, different arguments about do $15 now, and depending on what happens, you know, raise it to 25 a year from now. There is the argument to raise it now. That certainly wasn't what staff proposed as part of the proposed budget, but, you know, as Ray reminds me on a frequent basis, you folks are the policy makers. We implement the policy. We don't decide the policy. So you know, we'll implement whatever fee it is that the council ultimately decides on.
If I could add, Mayor, one of the things that we've talked about before is that we are looking for longer-term solutions for the fire and police financial struggles that we have been, are going to be in, and will be in the future. And the issue of raising the fee, well, a lot will depend upon what we decide to do in terms of a fire district or a local option levy, which we are currently laying the groundwork to do in May of 2026. I've already arranged for on July 7th, when we have our next public safety working group meeting, that Praxis, which is a consulting company on those elections, will become talking about how that works. And so the idea would be is the citizens would have an opportunity to change the way they get fire service, which if it's removed from the general fund, means we don't need this $15 anymore, and obviously don't need to increase it. So that's kind of the option that would be best for long term.
But if we do pass it in May of next year, it won't actually go in the 1st of July. It won't be up and running the 1st of July with a new fire district.
No, but it does go on the new tax bill. If we are, as of July 1, we would be assessed the value of the fire district beginning of July 1, and whatever fire district we're talking about would be covering us for fire, not out of the general fund. So yeah, that would affect the beginning of the budget year, 26, 27.
All depends on what actually gets put on the ballot and what the voters say.
And that's the other thing, what the voters say.
Praxis will help guide what, from a polling standpoint, what is feasible and how to approach it and all of those things. That's why I say there's still a lot of determinations to be made, so there's a lot of potential pathways that may impact where we are a year from now.
Eric, can I ask you a question? In theory, if a fire district passes on a conservative, do you have any numbers on a conservative fire district tax rate? How much money that would raise for our city? I mean, I know the city doesn't end up paying that, but
Well, there's sort of two different questions. What would be the cost to the taxpayer for a fire district levy being an additional levy on their individual tax bill? And then there's the question of what expense would the general fund be relieved of?
Yeah. Maybe what would the average person be assessed?
Well, again, it's like a property tax.
Right.
For any, it's gonna be based on what that property's assessed value is, so.
Do you have like an average for the city of what that would be?
I haven't calculated something, but I know Ray had spent quite a bit of time on that with the other city managers.
Yes, we have an economic report that was finalized a little over a month ago that I'm gonna be getting out to everyone, along with a feasibility study by another organization about fire that the 3 cities were involved in. So I'm actually looking for it right now, and as soon as I find it, I just have to remember to send it to you all. And it lays out the financial impacts of what a fire district would be at a certain rate. I think we picked randomly like $2.50, just to give an example, and of course, whatever that number is can be adjusted based upon the value of the house. But they also took into consideration the average tax assessed value of a Troutdale residence. So I will find that and get that to you.
I just think that would be helpful, because if we do implement fire districts, the cost to the average homeowner would be, it's gonna be more than this utility fee. And so,
Substantially more.
Yes.
I would tend to say 5-6 times more.
yeah, and so I'm just speaking out loud for obviously increasing the fee, is that I don't know if this would technically prepare people anymore for understanding what that fee would be, or what that tax rate would be to them. But I feel like it would be a little short-sighted for us to say like, oh, well, every year we'll just increase it. You're gonna have, and I just wanna make sure that I am personally thinking more towards the future, not just at this little tiny circle of time, but thinking 2 or 3 years out, what can be more beneficial for the city in terms of revenue, so we can continue to supply everybody with police, fire, parks, all of those things that come out of the general fund, because this goes to the general fund. We have to think of, we would end up having to, I think, cut things from the general fund next year, the year after, with this fee even still in place.
Yeah, if you're going to take off the table ever increasing it, yeah, that would be the case, because your costs are going to be going up for public safety costs, but all the other costs in the general fund are also going to be going up, whether it's be for parks operation or administration or finance or court or planning or any of the other areas. Now, certainly not as dramatically as the public safety costs rise, or at the rate that the public safety unions' rates tend to rise, but all of those other departments that are funded out of the general fund are also going to go up. So, in terms of looking out over the future, I appreciate that that's certainly a perspective that needs to be taken into account, and I think that's going to be part of those discussions over the next 6 months about what are you going to do about a fire service on a longer term basis. Some of the discussions with the polling and the political ballot experts, is that many times this is a more than 1 year educational process is required on the part of the constituency before you can get to a level of understanding of what they really are making a trade-off about, in terms of, okay, well, I don't want to vote for increasing my taxes, but I also don't want to vote to have my local park closed down because, there's only so much funds. And so that's not something that they're going to grasp in the first 30 days. It ends up being multi-month, multi-year education process about what the trade-offs are. And anyway, so that's, I'm getting far afield, my apologies.
So I am still thinking we probably need to go more than $15, because I don't want to come back to the people next year and say, okay, I need more money. So we need to plan
Well,
for the future.
from a local budget law standpoint, the expectation is that you build a budget for a year. Now, I appreciate you want to look longer term. You know, the issue is, again, a year from now, we're going to have increased costs across the board.
Correct.
Now, property taxes are going to go up as well, because the expectation is that all the property values are going to go up, so that's going to help some. But since it's limited to the 3% growth, apart from new construction, we can't keep up. So again, you know, if you're going to look at it, I mean, City of Fairview they haven't yet passed it, but they're considering both the $15 public safety fee as well as a $5 a month parks fee. Now, just as you elected officials are having indigestion over having to do that for your constituents and wanting to be receptive to their concerns, that council is also having some indigestion over that. But they're in a bit more difficult of a spot as a city. And, you know, they're looking at that, or they're looking at trimming back parks, which was not something that their constituents were interested in. You know, I think the reality is, I mean, unless there's a very fortunate outcome as it relates to fire services, you're gonna be faced with a meaningful cost increase in the budget a year from now. And then it's gonna be a question of, are you gonna raise this fee from $15 to $20 a month? Or are you gonna decide to spend down your reserve balance because you see a solution within another 12 months? Well, I don't know what that's gonna be a year from now, because we don't know quite how these fire service delivery models might evolve. We don't yet really know what the city of Gresham is going to do. Their participation in something could have a dramatically positive impact if they choose to continue to be resistant and believe that they're going to have to run their own fire service out of their general fund. It will make it more difficult for the 3 cities. But that's part of what that IGA agreed to, was that the 4 cities would discuss and come to a conclusion by the end of this calendar year about what they were going to do in July of next year. And, you know, so a lot of it remains to be seen. You certainly could choose to increase the rate now, but I'm not sure that, you know, I know what to suggest you would increase it to. Is it $20 is enough? Is $25 enough? Should it be $50 a month? To some degree, I think, you know, potentially increasing it or establishing it at $15 gives you the basis to have it introduced. You're certainly gonna end up with lots of conversation with folks that haven't been watching it. They're gonna ask you, what the heck are you doing? And it's gonna give you an opportunity to educate them about the bigger challenges and begin to lay the groundwork for what may have to happen in the future.
John?
I was gonna suggest $20 is what I was
You're
gonna suggest.
suggesting 20, all right.
Yeah.
Well, understood.
Well, and one of the other things we already know is that next year we have like at least 150,000 that has to go to Imagination Station. We're gonna have to work that into the budget or shut Imagination Station down.
Well, that's gonna be one of
This
the
fee is
trade-offs.
just for police and fire.
Right,
It's
I know.
just for police.
But I'm talking about the general budget, or the general fund for next year. But we
I
can't
want the
steal
public
from it.
to understand,
Sometimes
this
it's $20
is
bucks.
going to police and fire. That is what it is. All right, why don't we open up the public hearing and get some public feedback. I hear 15, 15, 15, and 25 and 20, so we kind of know where we are, but I want to hear from the public, and I'm sure we all do. So I'm going to open a public hearing right now. This is a resolution setting a police and fire services fee monthly rate, which we are going to vote on tonight. So I'll start with Those on Zoom, anybody wish to address the council?
Mayor Ritma, Paul Wilcox, Troutdale.
Yes, Paul.
I wanted to speak to Councilor Lamy's question specifically. I can see what Eric's saying about the future budget, the 26, 27, 28, 27, 28 budgets. But I know you're looking at in 26, July 26, July 1st, 26, sheriff's is going up over $500,000. The following July, it's going up another $500,000 plus. This 1.4 you're collecting from the $15 fee, that doesn't cover the entire increase that you're getting. Your increase is 1.66 something. So you're coming up short right to begin with. The budget committee declined to use the $175,000 pay down for the police building bond. So you lost $175,000 there. I'm just throwing some numbers out for your consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. Anyone else on Zoom wish to address the council on this matter? How about in the room here? Anyone care to address the council? Diane?
Hello, Diane Castillo, White City of Troutdale. First of all, I'd like to say the Champion article was very good to give people a comprehensive knowledge of what's going on in the current state and what's being discussed at this time. I do believe that, as Eric mentioned, this is a big thing for public outreach. And I do feel $15 is a little bit like, hey, we got a problem here. I do think that there should be multiple options in play, like you're talking district, but already anticipate if the district doesn't pass, just kind of what that might look like in the future. I'm on 3 committees and I'm not here to represent the Citizens Advisory Committee, but their job and my job is public outreach. I think this is something that needs to be addressed on many levels, so no citizen at any time will say, what happened? Why is this here? You know, then they don't comprehend it. Again, the Champion was a good start of saying the state of the union as it pertains to fire and safety and parks. So I think $15 is a good introduction to the communication of what, you know, looking at the future, but again, having different routes in play, just in case the district thing does not pass, and tons of communication. So we include everybody, including like a town hall. You could ask CAC, we could say, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is what the little First Fridays, or, you know, just every which way that we could positively engage the community. That might be a consideration for you all to possibly task the Citizen Advisory Committee, as well as the public safety anyway, or to work collaboratively to talk to the public about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Yes, please come forward. No rush.
Your time's up.
Hi, my name's Carrie Bingham. I live in Troutdale. I'm curious, as a renter, how the $15 is assessed. Is it per household, per person per household? Is it on water and sewer? Is it on electric? Because having a bit of a renter's background, that affects our apartment complexes, the RV park spaces, and I'm just wondering if there's a shortfall. For example, where we live, we don't pay for water or for sewer, but we do pay for electricity. So I'm just wondering how that will be assessed on us, or if the owner pays it. Most of my neighbors are on a very fixed income, and our owner keeps raising the rent every year 10%. So each year 10% gets larger and larger and larger. So to add on a $15 $1 a month, $20 a month, $15 a month fee on top of their rent's gonna go up $75 a month again this year. That is a huge thing for my neighbor, so that's why I was wondering if I could get clarification on how it's assessed.
I'm happy, Mayor.
Ray, if you'd like to.
And if I
Sure.
screw it up, Eric will help me. One, no, you will not get a bill for $15 a month personally. The way the fee is set up is every property in the city of Troutdale is determined to have what's called an ERU, equivalent residential unit. It's based upon impact on the sewer system, and so it's a way of measuring impacts. Each residence has one ERU, a regular home. All right, so a homeowner will get, for a single family home, will get a $15 a month added to the utility bill. An apartment complex has a ERU based upon less than the one per each unit. It may be, what, 2/3? Yeah, it's about 2/3 of an ERU. So what happens is your landlord will get added to his bill, say there's 100 units at your apartment complex, he will have 66 ERUs. He will get a bill for $900 each month for the additional cost for this fee. And that person can then decide to charge you more rent to cover it. He can choose to eat it, but he already is limited to how much he can raise your rent every year based upon a rate statute. So he will be limited. If he gives you a 10% every year, the maximum every year, well, then he can't increase it any more than that anyway. So if you're a renter, you're not gonna see the direct impact. You just may see it over time as an increase in your rent.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you. I suspect that just to comment on Diane's comment, I guess, about public outreach, the best public outreach is gonna be when the next bill arrives and it's on there. All of a sudden, we're gonna get all kinds of public outreach from that, but we've done our level best to alert people this is coming, but, we have an important decision to make, and we do need to provide, public safety is the number one role of government, at least in my opinion, and we have to have a sound funding basis for it, and this modest fee is unfortunately necessary. So we have, the resolution before us sets a $15 fee. A couple of our counselors.
You might want to just close the public hearing.
Oh, good point. Any more public comment? Thank you, Eric, that's right. Let's close the public hearing. And the resolution before us sets the fee at $15 a month. The couple of counselors are advocating a higher fee. I counted 4 counselors in favor of a $15 fee. So, I would also have favored a higher fee, I'll have to say, but I also favor this resolution as is. So, anyway, the matter's before us. If you want to discuss it further, fine. We've all made our pitches, though. I'd welcome a motion.
I did have one comment.
Go ahead, Glenn.
I think if we should tie into this resolution that if a future increase occurs, that there should be a formal public open house or outreach of some sort to the citizens before it. I think it'll help control this thing from getting out of hand. Because if let's say the district doesn't pass, I think at that point, if we're faced with making an increase, that we should do some type of formal outreach to the public.
Well, while I agree with that sentiment, I don't think, if we were to do an increase, we would have to do what you're saying. I'm absolutely convinced that we would, and putting it in this resolution doesn't seem necessary. I'm not against, it's not because I don't want that, it's just that we would have to we would have to do more formal public outreach. I mean, no question about it. So once again, yes, Jeffrey.
I just wanted to, Diane had a good comment and it made me kind of think. She said that this was kind of a good intro into the overall issue at hand. I think that something that Eric said, you know, the $15 fee, kind of mentioned that, you know, it would, the overall going to a fire district would be a lot more, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times more than that. And while I appreciate an intro of 10% maybe of what you would pay, I think the overall issue is really a lack of funding. I think we're still not even covering this year's increases. Next year are gonna be, there's gonna be more increases, and it's not to like favor my position or anything like that, it just resonated in that I wanna make sure that we make an intro that makes sense for the city, not just this year, but for the next couple of years as we continue to discuss fire district. It gives us a little bit of a buffer to really hash out and make good decisions, do good outreach, you know, really direct the CAC to like delve into it and go to town. And that if it doesn't pass, you know, the fire district doesn't pass this next year, like we're already so far ahead, and maybe going forward again the next year, they'll be able to hammer home where we missed on all that outreach. But in the meantime, we've already have a fee that gets us through that next year. And so I'm just really trying to think ahead, not just again right now with having an increased fee from 15 you know, to 25. I realize that 25 probably doesn't even really get us that whole way necessarily, but it really, I think in my mind, helps put a real good intro into people, and we've been real cognizant in our decisions. So, that's all.
All right. Anyone else?
I would just say to that point, if I may, I get the, I guess, kind of like shock factor in a way to not make it as comfortable necessarily, and people understand the gravity of the situation, but I feel like we kind of owe it to everybody to do more of that legwork before we don't give them a choice on it. So, meaning that if we keep the fee where it's at, estimated, it is still gonna be up to us to make sure that we're trying to come from the other side of the table. We're trying to find solutions, we're working it out, we're gonna be doing what we can before we come right out of pocket and basically ask them for, you know, that ultimately a $25 fee is gonna be like what, $770,000 extra. So yeah, it's not even gonna come close. It is more, and it will put a little bit more of a dent in it, but I think that still is $770,000 extra paid by residents that they don't have a say in. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. I'm still down for 15.
Well, does anyone care to make a motion?
I move that we adopt a resolution setting the police and fire services fee monthly rate as outlined by staff.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All right. Sarah?
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Webb?
No.
Mayor Ritma?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Davidson?
Yes.
Counselor Lehman?
No.
Well, it passes, but not unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. And we'll move on to agenda item number 5.5. A resolution amending section 7, city buildings and parks facilities of the fees and charges schedule to add a parking fee at Glenn Otto Park. Travis.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor Ritma, members of council. For those who may be watching don't know, I'm Travis Holton. I'm your Public Works Director. I'm here to talk about another fee, which I'm sure you're all excited to talk about more fees.
Wait, but let me add to this, that it shouldn't cost our residents anything.
Okay, I
just want to make sure, I'm sorry for stealing your thunder,
totally,
Travis.
like-
You may repeat it for the record, though.
That was gonna be my lead off, but,
Okay.
but the good news is that we don't, this is not a fee on Troutdale residents as proposed. And I'll get into why that is the case, as we go along. So, as you've read in my staff report, and as I think anybody that visits Glenn Otto Park in the summertime knows, we have a lot of parking challenges at Glenn Otto Park. The parking demand is so massive down there, especially on warm days, dry days, that it causes a lot of problems, and really makes people's park users' experience not as great as it could be. And that's something that people have talked about for quite a long time, including the Parks Advisory Committee. You know, these negative impacts, not only on people's user experience, but also on people's ability to use the park, frankly. I mean, what we find is that it discourages a lot of Troutdale residents from actually using Glen Otto Park, which is one of our best parks, I think, by most standards and most desirable parks. We heard that at the Parks Advisory Committee meeting discussions that have gone on about this. And we've seen it in some of the estimated numbers that we get from our tourism and economic development folks, that the park is overwhelmingly utilized by non-residents of Troutdale. Some numbers suggest that's in the neighborhood of 80% non-residents. But this is the people of Troutdale's park, right? And it's kind of sad that they don't really have the opportunity to use it as much as they would like, just given how jammed it is down there. So when you talk about parking problems, especially when you have a fixed supply of parking, as we do at Glen Otto Park, and you talk to the parking experts out there and the consultants and people that do parking lots and parking management, one of the first things they will tell you is that you know, you have to manage demand, try to manage demand the best you can, and the most direct route to that is by having metered parking or charging for parking. That helps manage the demand on the parking system and make sure that people are utilizing it efficiently and utilizing it when they, for the intended purpose and for when they really need it. The Parks Advisory Committee has talked about this for a long time, and Councilor Allen knows this well because she was on the Parks Advisory Committee a couple years ago when they were talking about this quite a lot. You see some of the excerpts from some of the meetings that went on in 2020 up until. There's a lot of discussion back in that time frame, and then they've been talking about it again recently as we've been approaching this summer. And while to the best of my ability and to our current staff's ability, we were not able to determine, we weren't able to find anywhere in the meeting records that there was a formal recommendation vote taken. When you do look through the comments that folks made, you can conclude that they generally supported it. There were a couple of Parks Advisory Committee members that were not as supportive. But on the whole, it seemed like that was something that they were behind. And they apparently drafted a letter that the prior Parks Superintendent was going to deliver to management. I've not been able to locate said letter. But the general contents of that letter, I think we were able to glean pretty well from the meeting minutes. And that was generally that there was, as a whole, there was support for charging for parking at Glen Otto Park, with a very important caveat, which is that Troutdale residents should be exempted from that fee. And I think the committee was pretty consistent on that, although I don't even know how these meeting minutes are sometimes. It's a little hard to interpret some things. It appeared that there may have been one or two Parks Advisory Committee members that weren't in favor of exempting Troutdale residents, although that's unclear on the record. But as a whole, again, that was certainly an important element to them. And when it's come up in other discussions amongst the council, that seems to have been at least several councilors have supported that concept as well, that Troutdale residents shouldn't be charged. And I think there's some good reasons for people to feel that way. The residents of Troutdale have, as long as the city's owned and operated the park, up until present day, they've paid for all the construction, operation, maintenance of the park through their property taxes. And if someone's going to pay this fee, that there's a general consensus that Troutdale residents shouldn't be the ones to pay it, especially since it's so heavily used by non-residents. All those non-residents right now are getting free usage of the park. And as you've all been talking about for some time now, and certainly during the budget committee meetings and some of the discussions you've had tonight, it doesn't hurt that this is a little bit of extra revenue into the general fund. Quantifying that is very difficult because we don't have a comparator parking lot that we operate that we can pull those numbers from, but based on some of the estimated visitation numbers, percentages of non-resident visitors to Glenn Otto Park that I was able to obtain from our economic development folks, I did some sort of, I'd say, rough back of the napkin type calculations. I mean, I used a spreadsheet, but I could see this fee potentially generating upwards of $50,000 annually. I can't guarantee that, but that seems to be what the numbers might suggest, and maybe even more, because I've got, I think, quite a wide margin of error in those calculations. I'm using a lot of estimated figures. But it would generate that revenue, and it would not be an insignificant amount. I think I can say that fairly. And that revenue would be coming from non-residents, folks that are using our parks and right now not really contributing to the operation and maintenance of them. So in working towards this, and based on a lot of the recommendations and sort of momentum we had from the Parks Advisory Committee and some of the discussions that have gone with the parking study that's been underway the last year or so, we have been making preparations, presuming that the council want to go this route. The staff, it's much more complex than you might think to set up a paid parking system. Although we have the help of some great vendors and consultants, there's a lot of little details. And so we've been working our way through that. And part of that, we talked about what kind of fee would make sense for this park. What the staff has proposed is a $2 per hour fee with a $10 a day maximum. So if you're going to pay for a full day, it would basically be $10. Anything less than 5 hours, 4 hours or less, you're paying $2 an hour. That seemed to be reasonable. That also tracks with the full day rate tracks with what the state parks are charging now, which we do have one fairly nearby at Dabney where they charge the day use fee. There's currently no fee at Lewis and Clark State Park. So that seemed to be a reasonable, properly scaled fee to our mind, but of course the council ultimately decides what that fee should be, if any. But we do have most of the pieces in place to launch this summer, if that's the council's desire. We do have a few final details to iron out. If the council were to adopt this fee, then part of the fee resolution indicates that the city manager or his designee, which would be largely myself and our park superintendent, would take the necessary steps to implement it, and that might take a few more weeks. Right now, what we're looking at is working with the same vendor that provides the back office software for Parking Kitty. So that's something that we gravitated towards because many people are familiar with it. Anybody that goes to downtown Portland has probably seen and used Parking Kitty. And it's a good system. The way it works is license plate based, so we don't have to take on the additional logistics and other issues and problems, which we've all talked at length about at the staff level with things like placards and stickers, and those all have a lot of complications associated with them. With the software that's available out there now, a license plate based system is much more efficient and easier to manage. And then we have the ability through that software system to exempt Troutdale residents that have registered with us. It would require them to pre-register. But of course, if you were going to give them a sticker or a placard or anything like that, they'd have to do that anyway. And enforcement will, again, the fee resolution essentially indicates that the city manager will direct the level of enforcement down there. I don't want to talk too much about what our intents are for enforcement because that might influence people's behavior in a way that we don't want to. But we will have enforcement to some level as determined by the city manager to ensure that people are keeping people honest, let's put it that way. There's also, you'll find in the fee resolution, it sets the violation penalties for that at $25 for the first 2 violations in a calendar year and $50 for each violation thereafter in a calendar year. So chronic violators will obviously pay more. With that, I think I've about covered, I guess I want to add, I mentioned that the software system is based on the same backbone as Parking Kitty. It's actually called Passport is the underlying software. And it gives us many options on how people can interact with the system. Of course, Troutdale residents won't have to at all if they've pre-registered. Troutdale residents will already be registered in the system. They can just park and walk away from their car, and if anybody who checks their license plate, they'll show up as a free parking Troutdale resident. Other folks that do have to pay, you can do that through a website, through an app. There's also a telephone line that you can call and pay by phone. And we do have on the way a kiosk that people will be able to pay at a kiosk. That will probably lag a little bit behind the software limitations because of the lead times on the kiosk from manufacturers. But we would expect to have that up and running still later this summer. In the meantime, your options would be through a smartphone app, through a website, or through, if you don't have either of those available, you can call and phone until the kiosk is ready to go. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Question? Carol?
Well, I guess I could say from being on parks, my answer has been no all along. While I appreciate Troutdale residents being able to park for free, when I go to other cities and I find that I have to pay by my phone, and I may not even have service, it becomes very frustrating for me, and I'd rather park a half a mile away and park for free than try to figure out on my phone, because I don't like technology, everybody knows that. I get frustrated, I move on. Sure. And so, but I also know families who travel that are traveling on a very limited budget. And those families, if they want to come to Glenn Otto Park, are now going to have to pay. And if they don't have the Kitty app, or if they don't have the $2 or the $4 to pay, then they're not going to be able to go to a park. And I mean, I understand having to pay for parking, but what happened to parks being free to kids? And that's a concern that I have. And then I know that Tim, when he was here, he had a lot of issues with Sugar Pine and their parking. And I don't know where that situation is, because I know when I go there, Sugar Pine has a lot of parking that they're taking up, and I thought that they were only supposed to take up a certain amount, which is less for the residents to park there or other people that park there. So that's also a concern. Is that even being addressed?
Well, certainly the Sugar Pine does place substantial additional pressure on the parking lot. That's something that we all recognize. The Parks Advisory Committee's talked about it, staff have talked about it. Under their lease, they have they're entitled to 3 designated or 3 reserved, shall we say, parking spaces, and those would be excluded from this paid parking system for them to manage themselves, and we have determined how those will be designated.
Did you say 3?
3. That's what's included in their lease. Yeah.
But they take up a lot more than 3.
Oh, I know. Yeah. That is the original lease that was signed with the city however many years ago, and that's the amount that was put into that lease.
7.5?
Yeah. And it's fair to remember that when Sugar Pine first came in, they largely were expected to be a drive-through type restaurant business. And I don't think that's exactly how things have played out as they've become much more popular, famous even, and expanded their offerings there. Nonetheless, the lease that we have reserves 3 parking spaces for them, and we will reserve those parking spaces for them. As many people know, as a public works director, when I'm involved in any leases that we have, thankfully not that many, my policy is we honor the lease, and that's what we do. So they're entitled to 3 reserved spaces, they will get them. Beyond that, we can't say for sure who's parking in which spaces on any given day. So anything that goes beyond those 3 spaces, their customers will pay that parking fee just like everybody else that visits the park.
Yes.
I will just say I was also on parks when we were having this discussion. From a high level, I mean, I think this was the best option we came up with to kind of address the parking situation that's been longstanding there. I will say, I mean, if somebody decides to park half a mile away and walk, then they can go visit our beautiful downtown, support businesses there, and kind of falls into the bigger picture of what we're kind of after. You know, Sugar Pine customers, I think, making up a majority of that, paying a parking fee will bring in income for the city too. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I think this kind of falls in line with what we discussed in those meetings when it came to Troutdale residents already paying for the park and not having to, obviously still being able to use it as an amenity to, you know, living here and being able to enjoy it. So I just think from a big picture perspective, I think it's kind of the best option that we've had up to this point.
Yes.
What's the cost to set up this whole parking system, ballpark?
It's about, I think we're gonna be at about just north of $15,000 with the software licenses, the setup fees, and then the kiosk is a big chunk of that. The kiosk, I wanna say, is around $7,000 altogether.
And is there routine costs, yearly costs?
There are annual software subscription costs, because it is a software system that we subscribe to. And they are, I'm gonna try to separate these out in my mind, and my apologies that I didn't bring those references with me. But I think the annual software subscription is around $2,000.
I guess my biggest fear would be it being such a burden on Sugar Pine that they decide to pull up shop and go somewhere else. You know, because 3 spots is pretty comical. You know, if you ever go down to that place on a weekend, there's probably 20 cars circling the area looking for a place to park. And if they take a 20% hit to their business, they might start looking for an ulterior spot. So when I looked at this before, I was like, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense, you know. It'll bring some revenue to the city. You know, if the Troutdale citizens don't use it and it's people coming from the out of the area, it makes sense. But Carol makes a good point that parks, like when I grew up, they're free. You go to a park. You know, if you don't have money, you go to a park. And I feel like I'm getting nickel and dimed every time I go to a park. It's, oh, we got to pay for parking. You got to do this. So it's really frustrating. So I'm coming up. Surprisingly, I think I'm kind of in line with Carol.
Okay. John? Start with, they get a killer price on their lease, they're not going anywhere. So is there going to be an exemption for people renting the park?
We did put that capability into the resolution, so yeah, I mean, one of the things as we've kind of been coming down the stretch on figuring this all out is that there's lots of reasons that people might seek an exemption, and good ones, you know, beyond just being a Troutdale resident. The couple that seemed to really come to the forefront were people that rent the Sam Cox building or if there are special events. You know, that doesn't mean that it's not built into this that there is an exemption for that. It gives the city manager the authority to provide exemptions for special events for renters of the Sam Cox building or other facilities of the park, for that matter. And also we included, you know, public service type meetings, because there are some meetings that can occur down there that don't necessarily rent the facility because they have rental exemptions already. So for example, I think a great one that somebody mentioned was a support group that meets down there regularly, and it's a drop-in type support group, an anonymous support group. We have the ability to give an exemption for attendees of that event. The city manager does, if he so determines that to be appropriate, because we may not want to discourage people from being able to avail themselves of those services.
It just seems like if I'm renting it for a wedding or something, that should be built into my rental cost.
We talked a lot about that possibility and in different ways to approach that. What we are intending to do is include, I think it's about 5 spaces that are automatically included with the rental for logistics that are close to the Sam Cox facility. So, you know, the people that have different events there, they have things they need to bring in, equipment or decorations or, food, whatever it may be, the current plan is there would be there's a specific set of spaces that are kind of off to the side near the closest to the Sam Cox building that the parks superintendent recommended that would become included with that. Everything else would be, at least our present thinking is that the rest would be paid parking like everything else, and we would make sure that renters are aware of that, and that they take whatever steps they feel they need to. If they want to have a shuttle or something like that, that's certainly an option. I will note that that does track with what Metro does. So Metro has rental fees for their, go to like Oxbow Park, for instance, which currently I think is closed, but during normal operations, you can rent the pavilions and things there for family reunion, whatever it may be. There are rental fees associated with that, but you also pay the parking fee with that.
Right.
Just a couple comments. Number one, Councilor Leamy, you are correct. They're not going anywhere because they have a good lease rate there. But more importantly, they're not going anywhere because they've personally invested over $150,000 of their own money into improving that building. So they've pretty much settled themselves in there with their own money to make that building. If you remember when Mark had it before, it should have been condemned. And they've done a lot of improvements there. So I think they'll be for a while. Second of all, before we came up with this formula for the rent, we worked with them. So that make sure that they were aware of what's happening. In fact, we changed it to make it hourly because they asked for that. So we did work with them on terms of what the parking rate would be. So we would take into consideration their customers in regards to how we set the fees so they could have that. Thirdly, the problem with the Sam Cox renters is we've talked about, I don't know, having 10 spaces that we would reserve for them along the west side there, just so if you rented it, how many there was. The problem we had is on a busy Saturday down there, if you have an event in the evening, Karen would actually be down there with ninja sticks trying to fight people because she would try to reserve spots for the people coming to the Sam Cox building, and it was a hand-to-hand combat, right, Karen? Yeah. So it just became such a nightmare for staff to be able to try to police whose space is whose space. And just part of it, as Travis was alluding to, it's part of it, we simply tell people when they rent it, here's what you're gonna get, here's what you need to worry about. If you're worried about parking, here's ideas for a shuttle, parking up at the Red Barn, or that house up the street, or you can park down, even farther down at Tad's, or you can park at Lewis and Clark State Park. There's other places to park, or we warn them to plan for it, to make sure they can. And finally, to reiterate what Travis was saying about Metro, the Gorge is full of $10 a day parking. I went up to the Mark Hatfield trailhead up in Hood River. They have one in Mosier, and I went there to ride bikes for 2 hours. I paid $10. And that parking lot was packed full. It didn't discourage anybody from going up there. People are just expecting it. The Gorge is full of those $10 a day stuff. And by the fact we're doing it hourly up to a max of 10, I think is a nice break for people. It's a tough adjustment, but like I said, the citizens are not going to be paying any for this. And we've been trying to balance all these different logistics things to try to be able to control parking down there because it is a parking lot that is full. Last Saturday and Sunday was full. Councilor White, wasn't it full?
Oh, yeah. But
So
worse
some way
was
control.
along the historic highway. It was so dangerous. It was no parking and wall-to-wall cars. Yeah, I mean, they're on the fog line, so for a bicyclist, there's no escape route. And it was one thing I asked the sheriffs to keep an eye out for, but anyway, I don't want to get off track.
Yeah, all great questions and concerns, and we really tried to work through all these issues to do the best we could with it.
Yes. Your turn.
I meant to do this earlier, but I just wanted to declare a potential conflict of interest. Not that I'm gonna receive any of this revenue or anything, but I do have the big field across from Glenn Otto Park, but I mostly donate it for like the egg hunt or any art festival, things like that. But once in a while I do lease it, so I just wanted to get that on the record. But I would like to participate because I live right across from it, and so I think I have a lot of insight to what goes on the busy summer days out there. So I guess, how many spaces are actually over there? Do you know the total number?
102, I think it is.
102, okay. And then, I heard that Lewis and Clark is gonna.
I made that, it's actually 110.
Thank
sorry.
you.
Oh, who was that?
That's Jonah. The park superintendent is online.
Oh, okay. I heard that Lewis and Clark is gonna start charging $10 as well. I don't know if that's true or not.
Last I heard, they did not have a day use fee at Lewis and Clark. You know, not all the state parks have a day use fee. But all the state parks that do have a day use fee increased from $5 to $10 at the beginning of this calendar year.
Okay.
That's about 25 parks around the state, as I recall.
And then, I was contacted by the Boy Scouts. They wanted to know if they were gonna be exempt from this fee.
If the city manager were to determine that they are a public service related organization and with his discretion give them an exemption, then yes, that would be up to the city manager.
What did you call them?
Oh, Boys and Girls Scouts, sorry.
Isn't it Scouting America or something?
Is it now?
Yeah,
Thanks for
but I know who you meant.
How does it work then? So as soon as you drive in to the park, you're getting charged, or?
No, there will be well, we'll have signage, of course, indicating how it works. That's one of the things Jonah's working on presently, to get those signs delivered. There will be, ultimately, by the end of this summer, is our expectation, you will have options between a physical kiosk. So if you, again, to use the example of Parking Kitty, if you look very similar to that, if you've ever been to downtown Portland and used the Parking Kitty system, there's a kiosk, screen, you walk up, you type in your license plate number, you put your credit card in, and it charges you the however many hours you put in, and then you can have a receipt sent to your phone. The other option that will be available immediately would be online through using a smartphone or a telephone. So on a smartphone, you'd have two options. One, you can go to the Passport website and just use their website for it. Or if you're someone who uses this on a more regular basis, you can actually download an app that you use for it, which streamlines things a little bit. And the third option, if you don't have a smartphone, before the kiosk is there, would be, there's actually a phone number you can call and pay over the phone.
And then, I'm a little concerned about not reserving spots for people that, you know, if a resident rents the Sam Cox building for the day, it's $900. And I don't know any venue that doesn't provide parking when you're renting a hall like that. I understand the conflict, you know, it's a battle to reserve those spots, because you have to do it in the morning before the event occurs, or there'll be cars parked in those spots, so.
Yeah, well, I guess, like I said, as an example, Metro charges their parking fee on top of their space rentals, their venue rentals.
I'm more worried that there wouldn't be any parking at all by the time their event starts. It's gonna be full. And, you know, you got people in wedding gowns and
This is why we warn them.
tuxedos.
This is why we warn them ahead of time. This is why we do reserve a limited amount of space for the tuxedo people. But we also have to remember, as I remember, Diane saying a number of years ago when we were setting rates for the Sam Cox building, we wanted rates set low enough that it could be accessible to people who didn't have a lot of money. So people are already getting a pretty good deal. If you look at wedding venues, I mean, they start at $5,000 a wedding, and we charge about $1,000, $1,200 or something. I don't know the rates.
It's in the
It's 900.
But yeah, but so the thing is, we're already giving a really good rate, and we are educating them about the parking issues, and so we try to balance all this stuff to figure out, you know, what's the best way to do it.
All right, moving on then, the other thing I see that occurs is, the lot fills up and people don't know there's no parking and they pull in, and now they're in Sugar Pines drive-through lane, which takes a long time to get through, and it kind of poses a hazard too. If it blocks everyone in their space for one, and I don't know if you have any plans to do something about that. I see it as kind of a dangerous situation.
Well, that, you know, Managing driver behavior is something that I have done a lot of work on over the years of my career here, prior to ever working with even parks and stuff. And it's very difficult. I know that Sugar Pine has taken quite a few measures to try to direct traffic that's bound for their restaurant, to let people know this is the way into the drive-through, this is where you stop, don't block this lane. But the fact of the matter is that you get such a jam of traffic down there that it gets congested sometimes. And there really is not, I mean, short of putting like a full-time traffic management person down there, which even would, to that, I think would have limited effectiveness. All you can do is provide people the information and the signage, and there's not much more you can really do. I mean, the other option, I guess, is if you were to have, you know, I don't think this is really practical for Glenn Otto Park, but the only thing I've seen that would be maybe more effective than that would be like you see in some parking garages where they have real-time monitoring of all parking spaces, know how many spaces are available at any given time. When they're full, there's a gate that closes, so you just can't come in.
And then you'd be blocking the customers.
It's sort of like having,
drive-through.
yeah, in a way, it's like having a robotic bouncer at a club, right? That says, well, we're too full right now, you can't come in, and when somebody walks out, I'll let you in, you know?
Well, maybe the charging will lower the number of people there, but, and one other thing, I read in the Champion that the money was gonna go into the general fund, but is this money gonna be earmarked for parks?
Not
revenue
presently.
from this?
No.
Okay, because that's something I would like to see change, because I like this concept of, you know, being the last free park on a waterfront property in the Portland area isn't the best idea, so I'm okay with charging, but I would like to work out some of these details a little better before it starts, but I definitely would like to see us earmark the money so it goes back into parks, because, you know, we could do similar things. We could get a food cart at another park. To me, I think it makes it even better for these parks to have some amenities to them, associated with them, but take that revenue and stream it back into the park, so we don't have to do a parks utility fee in the future, you know, because I kind of see where the conversation's been trying to go. You know, it happened in budget. We had a room full of parks people, and they're concerned about their funding. So I want to try to grow our way out of these funding problems rather than just keep tacking it on. So that's
that would be a question that I would have to speak with the finance director about how the accounting for that would work and how you would actually, you know, ensure that those funds are earmarked in that way. That probably does create some complications in that respect, but certainly, you know, the Parks Department is part of my Parks Division is part of my department.
Yeah,
be happy to have more funding.
So what do we do now with like the Sam Cox revenue or the parking, picnic areas? Is that just going in the general fund, or?
No, there's a special fund for the Sam Cox maintenance that the Sam Cox rental fees go into.
Anything else?
Quick question. So, one, do we have to have a kiosk?
Well, it was important in my mind to have that option because one thing that I'm very cognizant of is that not everybody, we assume everyone has a smartphone at our peril. Lots of people don't use smartphones, you'd be surprised. Lots of people use flip phones, some people don't have a mobile phone at all. So we want to make sure that I guess I would, in a way, build on something that Councilor Allen mentioned and that others echoed, that, you know, one of my main concerns with charging a fee for parking is just, I am a believer in parks being a public service and should be available to as many people as possible. I don't like putting up barriers that could potentially prevent someone from being able to use a park. And if we limit the options that people have to pay this fee, that can potentially prevent them from being able to use the park, or at least be able to park there. I guess they can still walk, of course, but unfortunately they can't take public transportation anymore. That was one of the reasons many years ago, I really pushed for the bus line to get down to Glenn Otto Park in keeping with what the council at the time wanted, because I felt that made the park more accessible to everybody. We don't have that option now. It's park or walk or bike, it's basically our options. And so I think having the kiosk is important because if you don't have a smartphone.
You're talking into it, so. And then I just have a question. This is kind of a technical question. So let's say I haven't signed up. I go down there and park, and I get a ticket. And I'm a Troutdale resident. Is there a way for them to be like, we're like, hey, you can get this for free. You need to go sign up, and we will waive your $25 fee as a way to get them to sign up, so they're ready to go. That would kind of be their notification. They keep doing it, then.
Well, I would expect that would be within the administrative capacity of the city manager. Ed may be able to correct me, or the city manager may be able to correct me, but I don't think there's anything in this resolution that
Could also go to the municipal court. The judge could just be told to do the same thing.
That's another option. So, well, I can't, I am not granted that authority by this resolution, so it's hard for me to say for sure, but I think that would certainly, that would make sense to me.
It's common in court, if you have a clean record and you get a ticket for failure to renew registration, you get it renewed before you come to court, judge just dismisses it. But that's definitely something, because the citizens, it's pretty easy for them to be able to just register their license plate number. And if they do that, then they can go to court. And like I said, I'll talk to Travis, but it's something administratively we should be able to do for our citizens.
I expect there will be a lot of these little teeny details, that we're gonna learn along the way that we will have to, to the extent we are able to, within our authority, manage administratively and iron out, because this is not, we don't have a paid parking lot so far. So while we've talked to a lot of folks that operate paid parking lots, I'm sure we will have some surprises and some things we didn't think of,
Yeah, okay, thank you. Just real quick. I really hear what Jesse and Carol have to say. And Ray said every other park I go to, Trailhead up in the gorge, you have to either have a state parks pass, forest pass or something that you pay for to utilize that area. It's a pretty heavily used area, and so I just wanted to say, I hate that we have to go to do this.
Zach? Yeah, I just had one last kind of similar question to the last one. As far as notice given to Troutdale residents, it sounds like you guys already have some signage in the works. Are we directing or putting lines in to direct residents to do that? Say they don't have, I've been to so many meetings where people are just like, I had no idea this was going on, despite obviously ample opportunity to tune in. So for those people who show up at the park and they see this new parking and they're Troutdale residents, but they have not pre-registered, I guess I just want to make sure that we're creating pathways that are easy to use, or QR codes to direct them to the website, or whatever we got to do to get people to easily be able to just register and circumvent even having to go down that route and getting a ticket, because they're able to do something like that on the spot if needed.
Yeah, so that is one challenge. Let me back up. So the process that we are developing for registration would be the city will maintain a registry, and then their license plates would be logged into the actual software, because that's what's used to monitor the parking lot. The registry would be sort of a separate ledger where we keep track of who's registered and what license plates they registered and when and their address and those sorts of things. Our intent would be to have a couple of locations where they'd be able to do that: City Hall and Public Works. We are going to publicize that through the social media. Depending on timing, I don't know if we'll be able to get, if the next champion will come out before we're ready to launch this. But we'll certainly have indications on our signage at the park, letting folks know. The one challenge would be, and somebody asked this question to me the other day, would somebody be able to, for instance, go down to City Hall, register, and then go directly to the park? And I cannot promise that because of the way that the registration process will work. There may be some time that it takes for that information to be given to the city and for that information to then be transferred into the system. So we have developed some prototype registration forms, and in the registry, we're still doing the final tweaks on some of that stuff, but basically they would fill out a form that will self-certify that they are a Troutdale resident initially, and then that can be turned in online or in person at the locations I mentioned. But we will tell people that they need to allow a few days at least for processing time, because the people that are going to take in those registrations and then put them into the system and know all that, and they have many duties, and they may or may not. The person may be out sick that day, or there's lots of things that can get in the way of that. We don't have one person just dedicated to taking these registrations and putting them in immediately. So I can't. I would be remiss to guarantee that we can do instantaneous registration.
I will promise that before I leave this job, not this world, before I leave this job, that I will have a standard operating procedure that states very clearly that for citizens who get a ticket or have to pay, who would have gotten a free one, we will bend over backwards on their first offense to refund their money or dismiss the ticket. To make it very clear that we will work with our citizens to make sure, because we do not want to be a gotcha on this for our citizens. They already pay enough, as we all know, and so we will make very sure. So Travis, remind me when we talk tomorrow, I'll whip that up for you.
Yeah, I mean, I just
if it's approved tonight. If not, well, okay, fine.
I just want to emphasize what Ray just said. I mean, it is absolutely our intent not to charge Troutdale residents either the fee or any fine, but in order for us to do that, we have to know who they are and what cars they're parking. And so we need them to register if they want to get this free parking. There is a capability within this software for us to issue refunds. So if someone were to, if we needed to refund a parking fee, we would have the capability to do so. So if somebody were to come down and say, well, I didn't realize I had to register. I paid $10 to park at the park the other day. I want my money back. I'm a Troutdale resident. If they register, then we would have the capability to do that. So I think we have administrative processes where we can handle those things. Undoubtedly, it will be a little bit rocky, as we kind of break it in and really get everything figured out. But we will certainly do our level best to implement the intent here and not charge Troutdale residents anything that we didn't intend to charge them.
Thank you.
I'll just tell you my favorite thing about this resolution is in the now therefore be it resolved section 3. The city manager or designee shall arrange for and administer the implementation of the Glenn Otto parking fee and shall commence collecting the fee when all necessary measures are in place. We're not going to even get it done this summer, I wouldn't think. I mean, there's just so many exceptions and givebacks, and that's my thinking. I'm not against the fee, but I wanted to get that in. Jesse.
Is it possible today to earmark the revenue from this to the Parks Department?
Yes, and in fact, I liked it. I liked the idea so much. I spoke with Glenn just before the meeting that I have a proposed amendment after sections 1, 2, and 3, the one I just read. I would add a new section 4, any funds left over after deducting costs associated with collecting the parking fee shall be allocated to funding Troutdale parks. That would be section 4, and then the current section 4 would be section 5. And I would offer that amendment when the time comes.
Is there a tie between me registering and DMV to verify?
No.
Okay, so I live in Gresham supposedly, and I have a buddy that lives in Troutdale that let me know if I want to come down here for free. So I use his address.
It's the plate. It's the
But he
plate.
said the plate is not
Get him
registered.
to take your plates off your car and put them on his car. Then you'd get away with it.
Well, as a, yeah, no,
I'm serious.
this is something thought a lot about, you know, potential ways people can cheat, fraud, game the system. To some degree, I think initially we are going to roll the dice on that. And if we find that fraud is a problem, then we're going to tighten things up to try to clamp down on that. But we want to try to make this accessible and not too much of a burden for Troutdale residents to register and not too difficult to administer. So our initial thinking is it'll be a self-certification. You'll have to provide your actual residence address. And as we put into the resolution, the city manager can put reasonable limits on the number of cars that or license plates that a given residence can register. So, you know, you can't register 20 cars to the same address, let's say, for all your buddies all around the metro area. We think that, you know, if somebody's limited to registering 2 or 3 license plates, that will keep a reasonable lid on that. But we can't guarantee that people aren't going to try to fraud that. If we suspect that that's happening, then we may require more proof of residency. We did wrestle with that question as to how much we wanted to require up front. One of the things we wanted to do, again, trying to make this accessible, and this was a great discussion I had actually with our finance director, that, you know, we'd like to be able to submit all this online if possible. That makes it as easy as possible, so they don't have to come down to City Hall, or they don't have to do it during, you know, their work day when they're, you know, normally at work or whatever. And if you require significant proof of residency, that makes that a lot more difficult, because now people are having to send you copies of documents with their personal information and things like that we would rather not keep a big file of down at City Hall if we don't have to, or people might be discouraged from providing. People are very protective of their personal information these days, as they should be. So the initial thinking was, you know, if we don't require that, if we allow people to self-certify, we can certainly verify that their address that they provide is in Troutdale, and we can certainly verify that whether that address has already been registered. That allows them to fill out a form online, email it in if they want to, and do the registration that way.
I just thought of another one.
Yeah, there's many.
Because Troutdale addresses, we village is Troutdale, and Springdale is Troutdale. Is there?
We have tools, particularly our geographic information system, where we can determine if an address is actually within the city limits or not. We do it quite regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know, like, to vote in Troutdale, you have to have a water.
Yeah, I mean, people do get confused because, and we see this with some of the things. I mean, some of the other Troutdale resident events and things that we do. This is one that came up, one of the examples I think of is with our yard debris event, which is available to Troutdale residents. They get a coupon in the Champion. Well, guess what? The Champion goes to people that are outside of Troutdale because they're on the Troutdale postal route. They're served by our post office. So now in that case, we just kind of say, you know what, it's a public service and we're not going to worry about it too much because the numbers aren't that huge. But that is a problem we run into with, I've had many calls over my career here at the city where somebody called in and said, you know, I have this question about this in Troutdale, and I ask, okay, well, what's your address? And they tell me, and I look it up on the GIS, and I say, actually, you don't live in Troutdale, you live in Wood Village.
Right, okay.
All right, well, I will move to a public hearing at this time on this resolution. At this time, I'll open a public hearing on a resolution adding a parking fee at Glenn Otto Park. The matter is going to be before the council. Whether we vote on it tonight or not, I don't know, but that's what's up. And so I invite public comment at this time. Anyone on Zoom wish to address the council on this matter?
Mayor Paul Wilcox, Troutdale.
Yes, Paul?
Okay, got a few items here. Number one, the pay by phone or pay by app systems, I have absolutely no use for. I have that at Marina Park and Cascade Locks, and I refuse to park there because I don't have a smartphone. So that's an issue. So this wouldn't apply to us as property residents, but I wouldn't burden outside visitors with that system either. As far as fees, few examples. Oxbow is $5 a day. State parks, as Ray mentioned, are now $10, but you can get a annual pass for $30. It's good for 365. You can get a 2-year pass for $50, which we just recently bought. Recently noticed the regional parks in Clark County are $3 day use fee. So you're looking at up to $10 if you spend the entire day at Glenn Otto. As far as Sugar Pine, a couple's going to spend $50 plus for a meal there. So I don't think $2 for parking is going to break them. And I think that covers it for now. Thank you.
I'll just say, Paul, I don't have a smartphone. I have a flip phone, but the parking kitty system down in Portland, which Travis said we would be using, I can use that and have used it like 3 times now. And it doesn't require a smartphone or an app. So it does work. You have to punch in your license number, but it does work. Anyone else on Zoom wish to address us on this matter? How about here in the room? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm not that kind of Karen. I'm the caretaker at the Glenn Otto Park. And I think that I'm deaf, so I didn't hear a lot of what you guys were saying. So my questions are probably going to be more food for thought than anything else, and you're all welcome to come out on a really hot weekend like this last weekend and see what goes on. It's horrible. Anyway, I have a few questions as far as our events in the building. How is that gonna work? I mean, I don't know that you know, but that's my concern, like Kiwanis. AA is probably the largest AA group in East County. So they extend out. Now that front parking lot is mine supposedly, according to Jonah, that is for groups or people that are in the building. We don't say for shelters. I used to block off, until last week, I used to block off all the parking. I started with cones, then I went to sandwich boards, and then Fred bought me some big construction barriers because they would move them, run over them, or whatever. So I'm just wondering about that. Can I still do that? Or is that gonna interfere with whatever? And is the front part, it's divided, it's in 2 parts. By my house, is that gonna be paid for parking too? These are all questions, these are the food for thought. And when it does go in, and people start having to pay, and the lot is full, what happens to the drive-through people who have to come in, turn right and go all the way around, and they don't stop here, they kind of cross over into Sugar Pine? No, it's bumper to bumper. It's horrible. So if all the all the park spaces are taken, then we're kind of like, where do they go? Because no emergency vehicles can get in. One of the Multnomah County sheriffs 2 years ago, before Oregon security started, tried to get out. He had his lights and sirens on, and they wouldn't move. They're bumper to bumper from coming in all the way around to go through the drive-through. And those are just things I watch and wonder what, I can't do anything. This is my badge and it's not very good. It doesn't work very well. So, my big concern is people who rent the building and they have I have that space is 21 spots. So if there's 2 people to a car, that's 42 people. If they have 100 people, I don't know where to put them. And do they have to pay because they just paid $1,000 to have the building? Are they gonna have to pay for parking too? So, I don't know,
I would suggest, Karen, you talk to your supervisor, Jonah, about a lot of these questions.
Who?
Talk to Jonah.
I did.
Yeah, because a lot of
And
these
he
questions.
said, I don't know a thing about it.
Okay, well, Jonah should have given you a different answer. We'll talk about that one later.
Yeah, that's not exactly accurate, but all right.
It's not something to discuss right now.
No, that's why I came here, because I wasn't getting anything. And I don't care what I have to do, just tell me what to do. But I watch it this weekend. I said I wasn't that kind of Karen, but this weekend I had to control myself. I mean, it was horrible. And nobody uses the park. There isn't a soul back in the park. They eat their food on the tailgates of their cars and trucks, thinking that's it. And so the park is empty, unless they're going to the beach, and those are people who know that there's a beach. And then when I close it at 9 o'clock, they say, are you closing Sugar Pines parking too? I said, yeah, I am. So, yeah, it's just, you gotta come out and see it, and then see what you have to do, because I don't know where all these cars are gonna go. And I will do anything I'm supposed to do, but right now I'm supposed to do nothing, so I don't.
So Karen.
Except for Kiwanis, they can come in, but AA extends out into the other one.
Karen, you then do not favor this parking fee?
I do.
Oh, you do
I'm
favor
just
it?
curious as to where all the excess parking, these people are coming from God knows where. They don't know it's a park. They're going to Sugar Pine, and that's great, you know, but they have no idea. They sit on the curb and eat their ice cream because they don't know they could walk right behind the Cox building and there's a big open park with picnic tables. So, you know, I'm not sure how I think it's gonna improve, but I don't know where that excess is going. They can't park on the streets. So it's just kind of scary because, you know, our Oregon security is wonderful, but they told me they weren't there to monitor traffic. They are there to monitor people. So I don't know. And I stay in the house. I just like, oh my God.
All right, well, thank you.
Or I go and complain to Glenn. So, okay, that's all I
I've seen
wanted
it,
to
Karen.
know. I will
You
ask Jonah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of this is problems we can't solve.
Pardon me?
There's a higher demand than there are spaces in the park. And unless we close the park to people, if it gets full, we're gonna have this problem. It's just gonna be endemic to the park. It's just gonna always be an issue.
I don't mind that at all. I'm just
Yeah.
concerned about people who are renting and, you know, where do I put them there? They ask me and I don't know what to tell them.
That's why I said, we're changing the process so that they know before they rent that there's a problem that they have to deal with. I'm not yelling at you, I'm just raising my voice because you're hearing.
Oh, no, I understand.
Want to make sure. So
Yeah,
yeah,
fine.
we've
I
talked
can be a
about this.
Karen.
Yeah, we got it, Karen, thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
anyone
Karen.
else? Tammy?
I heard uh-oh.
Good evening, Mayor Rittman, councilors, Tanny Stephenson, Troutdale resident. I'm not opposed to the parking fee, but I do have a couple of comments. You know, you mentioned, Councilor Andrews, that they're probably gonna come downtown and shop. Unless you've got a concierge down there at the bridge, I'm not so sure that's gonna be ultimately successful. I can tell you where most of the people are going. They're parking along what is the historic Columbia River Speedway.
Yeah.
And I mean this sincerely because except for I-84, I'd like any of you to tell me any street in the city of Troutdale that has higher speeds and more fatalities than that stretch of road that is within Troutdale. Now, granted, we had some high temperatures this last weekend. We had people parked along that road. It is signed, no parking, all along there. You've got people parked every which way they possibly can, substantially over the fog line. You've got bicyclists on that road all day long. You've got people walking on that road, and you've got people driving, and this is no exaggeration, in excess of 80 to 100 miles an hour on that road with curves. And so I get it. This is kind of like a Portland thing. We're going to push the problem a little further east, so it's going to go on the other side of the river. Okay, I get that. But how about a little bit of help, maybe from the county sheriff or somebody else? It doesn't do any good to have no parking signs if nobody's ever going to enforce it. And occasionally I do see a vehicle marked sheriff drive by. They must miss that part of the daily briefing or something because they just go by. Nobody ever gets ticketed. Nobody ever gets talked to. And it is a severe problem. And the end result of this isn't about parking. The end result of this is about safety, and there's going to be fatalities. And I don't think any of us want that. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. That's not an exaggeration either. It's that bad.
Anyone else?
We don't control that, that's not part of us.
Yeah, that's Troutdale. If you take a
Historic
right,
Columbia Highway is, well,
if you go left,
the
it's
road
not.
is not our responsibility.
Hey, Diane Castillo White. I haven't talked in months, so just some good topics tonight. The $2 an hour, I'm glad you went with that. That's very reasonable, and I'm glad we're exempting Troutdale residents. As Ray said, on CAC, when we had to address costs for renting the building, again, we got two great guys that's named after Glenn Otto and Sam Cox. Just awesome. Community, love Troutdale, a lot of history involved. My concern is, as Karen brought up, the issue, and I know it's still hand in hand, even if this isn't resolved till a later time. But again, how many spaces people get when they rent it for a wedding or whatever they rent it for, nonprofit or whatever. And the reason I'm saying this is, living across the street, I get to see how many cars are parked there every day. Sugar Pine used to be closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Those days, there might only be 5 cars. That's it. The other days, full house. It could be a full house, even if it's not a weekend. Hot days, regardless if we had a Sugar Pine or not, was going to fill up anyway. As Ray said, we're popular. We're just very popular. There's an issue and there's a lot of, it's going to be full. My point to be brought up though is that as a community, I love the concept of people gathering. That's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful spot, whether it be whatever nonprofit that it is or wedding venue that's reasonably priced or whatever it is. So I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be tonight, but they get more spaces, and we come up with a creative way to reserve those spaces, because otherwise you're basically talking about Sugar Pine or the people that go to the event location. A lot of the other people that come for swimming are not from here, but an interesting phenomenon is I'm seeing the Sugar Pine people coming back to enjoy our river, which is awesome. Tourism, maybe they'll go downtown. It's a good thing. Sugar Pine's amazing. So this is just growing pains and just what's going on with our beautiful area. People are gravitating here anyway. There's a lot more people coming in. So $2, very reasonable. But I just would like us to consider, if not tonight, a later time, that please think about giving people spaces for reserving that space. So it's not just Sugar Pine, because a lot of Troutdaleans are not using that location. And I see it from living across the street on the Tuesdays and Wednesdays that Sugar Pine was closed, that there'd just be maybe 5 cars. I think Marley was tracking people too, like who's using the park? How many Troutdaleans are using the park and such? Not very many. So $2, $4, if somebody was just using it once a month anyway, not unreasonable. Also, again, another trial, we'll see how it works. Is security gonna cost too much that this just doesn't make sense? We don't know that. But we do know that we're having growing pains, you know, and then Sugar Pine knocking it out of the park, introducing new people to our community. You know, just a good thing. But people wanting to reserve it for a reasonable price and be part of our community, be it nonprofit or be it a reasonable way to have a party. Or one of our past officers is gonna have a 40th or 50th wedding anniversary coming up very soon. That's awesome. And just something to think about. And but I believe I am for. It's a sad day for me, but we're growing. And so the days of not having to pay and just we're open to the welcome door, welcome to the community, we're just too popular. We're spilling out. But we are going to have to look at those issues later, because I think it was Sunday, I was going to cross the bridge. Well, first of all, it was hard to get off the freeway. As soon as you went off the freeway, there was cars parked, driving and stopped. And then once I was trying to go across the bridge to get home, you were stopped on the bridge for people to turn left to go into our park. We're popular, we're amazing, we're beautiful. It's just gonna happen. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thanks. Anyone else? All right, I will close the public hearing.
Dave, I have one last question.
Yes.
I want to know if we're going to need additional staff if we implement this. Are you able to handle this without additional staff?
At present, the intent is not to use any additional staff or security resources, to use the existing security resources we have at the park. That will inform the level of enforcement that we do there, which will be directed by the city manager. But if we do find that we need a firmer hand on enforcement, or more step up the level of enforcement, then that would require additional security resources, which would be presumably provided by our current security contractor or successor. Right now, that's OPS. They provide security down at the park in the summertime already. And this would be something that we right now intend to incorporate into their existing patrol, I guess you would call it, of the park. We have to iron out those final details with OPS, of course, and it's possible that it may reduce the amount of total hours that we can have OPS down at the park. We don't think it'll be a huge impact, but I can't guarantee that there won't be some reduction, because this is an additional service and it may require some additional. They may have thoughts on that, how that affects our contract with them.
This is the first time we've ever done this. It's began with an attempt to control parking down there, because it is crazy, and it's a way to make sure that who comes there is actually there for the park. It's a big learning curve. We're gonna learn stuff. Nothing's written in stone. We're gonna change things. All that we can promise you is that we're going to start off with a very soft hand, especially toward Troutdale residents, and even toward the people who are not residents. We're gonna make sure there's a good learning curve, because we have to learn a lot, see how it works out. And so we are gonna be open to making changes. But a lot of questions tonight are great questions, but a lot of them we can't answer until we see how it works, and then adjust from there.
It was done once before. They did charge, like, it was over 34 years ago, but it went broke. It cost more money back then, so they pulled it out.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've seen and the research I've done, and the parking operators that I've spoken with, and people that do parking management, is that paid parking is a winner on the net, even with full-time enforcement. That has been a consistent finding we found with everybody we've talked to and everything we've read, that paid parking with enforcement pays for itself. And in fact, there are some cities that's their second largest source of revenue, next to their property taxes. Those are cities that have parking throughout their downtowns and things like that, were especially popular tourist destinations. But it is a winner from a financial perspective when you look at the cost versus the returns.
I think it'll be a good program.
yeah, I mean, that's been very consistent in everything I've seen, all the research I've done and folks I've talked to.
All right, I would entertain a motion. And I guess if the mover and seconder is willing, I will read out the amendment I had to allocate any leftover funds to Troutdale Parks and see if you accept it. So that's what I'm proposing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution amending section 7, city buildings and park facilities of the fees and charges schedule to add a parking fee at Glenn Otto Park with the amendment made earlier by Mayor Ritma.
Great, anyone?
I'll second.
All right, and if you'd like, I could read my proposed amendment again a little more slowly. I propose that following section 3 in the part now, therefore be it resolved, the section numbers, that a new section 4 be as follows. Any funds left over after deducting costs associated with collecting the Glenn Otto parking fee shall be allocated to funding Troutdale parks. And then section 5 as printed, section 4 as printed be changed to to section 5. Just because I thought that should be the one else. So that's the resolution as amended. And if it's clear to everyone, we'll vote. Sarah, go ahead.
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
No.
Counselor Wynn?
Yes?
Mayor Ritma?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Davidson?
Yes.
Counselor Leamy?
Yes.
All right. And moving right along, we'll go to agenda item 5.6, a resolution approving a 3-year intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County to continue receiving law enforcement services through the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we'd spoken about earlier this evening in the budget adoption and then with setting the police and fire fee, costs associated with providing law enforcement services which are provided through the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office are based on a IGA. As we've talked about before, the IGA is expiring the end of this month. And what is before you is a resolution to approve an IGA that's been updated from the one 10 years ago, which is for a 3-year term. The amounts are outlined in the staff report. The PSWAG group has met many times and has been pursuing the negotiations with the Sheriff's Office and has relentlessly pursued it and wrestled it to the ground so that we have a new IGA for continued service beginning July 1st. And this resolution is simply to approve that so that it can go into effect. And with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Questions? All right, we worked long and hard on this, and I will compliment our sheriff, Sheriff Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell, for having worked diligently on this, and I think for the good of Troutdale, really. This was a hard-fought battle, but what we end up with is it's more expensive, but we can fund our police for possibly another 3 years, but at least we're good for this year. With that, I'll invite public comment. I'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone in Zoom that wishes to, this is a resolution that we're going to vote on tonight. and approving a 3-year intergovernmental IGA with Multnomah County for sheriff services. Anyone on Zoom wish to address the council on this matter? Anyone here in the council chambers wish to address the council on this matter? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public comment, and the matter is before us.
I'll make a motion, resolution approving a 3-year intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County for law enforcement services provided through Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. I'll second it.
All right. If there's no further discussion, Sarah, go ahead.
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor One?
Yes?
Mayor Ritma?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Davidson?
Yes.
Counselor Leamy?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right, thank you. Staff communications.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Number one, remember the next Tuesday evening, June 17th, we have our end of the budget year URA meeting. We have a number of financial votes to take that night and to consider the exclusive negotiating agreement with the development group that has made the proposal. So that's next Tuesday evening. Second of all, tomorrow evening, there's a planning commission meeting, and they're going to be discussing design standards. I don't think there's any votes of any particular import tomorrow, but they're discussing design standards. Number three, this Saturday, we're having another recycling day, paper stuff, electronics, things like that. If you have some details, it's in the Champion or on our website, another recycling day where you take things to the public workshop. And finally, number four is that a week from Friday on June 20th is our first Movies in the Park. And it's plural movies in the park, but that night we're doing a different thing. We're doing just one movie at 7:30, and it's going to be Wicked, which is a wonderful musical. And it'll have free popcorn for all citizens and a free movie. And it's been a very popular event, and we're looking forward to good weather. And it'll be one of the 3 we have scheduled this year, but the first one is June 20th. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Council communications. We'll start with you, Zach.
Yeah, I just have one, as a heads up. Obviously, I will try and continue attending everything I can, even if it's virtually, but I am expecting a baby boy on June 23rd. So that is coming up here in a couple weeks. So just a matter of flexibility. I will communicate with you guys as able with meetings. This is a busy week for a lot of reasons, but I will do my best to be present.
That's a good reason.
Yeah, that's a pretty good
one of the best.
Carol.
I have nothing.
All right. Jeffrey.
I might have making it quick. I attended First Friday for the first time, and it was wonderful. A lot of people there. It just seemed like a really awesome event, and brought in numerous people, and so I was just really proud and happy to see Troutdale thriving in that realm. So it's pretty cool. That's it.
I saw you there.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, or you saw me. Anyway, I also attended First Friday and was very pleased with it was a good turnout, and everybody was having a good time. I went to the Arts Festival, whatever it's called, on Sunday. It was really hot, and there were people, but it wasn't as well attended as the First Friday, just because of being the day. And I did talk to, I think her name was Ellen Green, anyway, whoever was organizing it was in front of Mayor Square about it, and they had taken a survey of all the art people that were selling their goods with ideas on what to do. It was, the problem was the day, you want a nice day in June, you don't want it raining, but it was hot, and I think, my thinking at the time was that First Friday benefited by starting at 5 and being an evening thing. Everybody was in the mood or something. I hope the Arts Festival was not complete bust. I thought it looked, there were always people walking up and down, and I don't know how much was sold, so, but we are gonna get a report from the first Friday, or from the art show people at some point, maybe in the fall, about ideas of what to do. And at that time, we should probably, in response to Martha Pompeo's questions about what's appropriate, we should also do something similar to discuss the format for First Friday, although I thought it went very well. And there might be other tweaks that can be made, but we don't need to just worry about that right now. Anyway, it was a great weekend for Troutdale. We were really on the map, so. Glenn?
Yeah, same. I attended both days. It was extremely hot, but there were some really talented artists. If you missed it this year, try to put it on your calendar for next go around.
Jesse?
I guess just what Tandy said about that historic City River Highway and the speeders and the parkers parked on the fog line. I guess what we could do is just put pressure on the county sheriffs to patrol it, tow cars if they have to, if they're parked over the median. He's right, that's gonna kill some bikers. We gotta do our best to correct that.
Agreed, yeah. John?
I too saw you at First Friday. And
That's right, I saw you too.
Traffic for the art festival was a disaster on Buxton on Sunday at least. Their control people. Well, my son went down Buxton and at Second and Buxton, people were pretty much on their own because the guy standing in parking was sitting in the chair on his phone. And people were trying to go this way where traffic was going, and there was somebody that was parked below the restaurant here.
No parking.
Where it was no parking, and they actually got hit. And then one suggestion that Ray might be able to do something about. The police department has a tendency to park a car for 2 weeks, one place or another place. They should periodically put an officer in it, because people get used to that vehicle just sitting there, and they speed right past it. And so if they would just drop an officer in there periodically, they could pick up a bunch of people.
One more staff communication. I had this exact conversation with Captain Stewart this morning about one, move it more often so it doesn't get so stale there, but also our community resource deputy has now once in a while parked behind it so people don't notice it, and he's written tickets for people who think it's a dead car, but he's really parked behind it in another car. So yeah, I've talked to him about that to make sure we don't give up opportunities to reduce speed around.
After I saw him, I thought, oh, I should have said something.
Yes.
Well, I noticed they moved the car on Troutdale Road from one side to the other.
Oh, is
Same
it?
place.
Yeah.
Nobody in it.
I mean, there's no one in that car?
No, there is. There, for the record, there is somebody in that car with a radar gun.
There you go.
Not.
Anything else? That concludes the formal portion of the meeting. I await a motion.
Move to adjourn?
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.